Welcome to the Unclassified Horror. I'm here to make your nights a little more interesting and maybe a little more unsettling. This channel is for those who enjoy realistic horror, the kind that feels possible, the kind that could happen on a quiet trail, deep in the woods, far from help. But before we step into the deep woods tonight, take a second to check if you're subscribed. We're a small group of explorers right now, and every single one of you matters. If you love the silence of the forest, but fear what's hiding in it, join us. Let's get to 1,000 before the sun goes down. Subscribe the channel, hit the bell icon, and let me know from where you're listening. Now, turn off the lights, and let's begin. If you're hiking in Appalachia and the wind starts sounding like humans screaming, standard survival training will actually get you killed. According to top-secret ranger protocols, you must never look up at the canopy and you must ignore any frantic calls for help coming from the trees. But what if you're the person who's supposed to figure out why? My name is Dr. Vanessa Cho, and I'm an acoustic ecologist specializing in atmospheric sound phenomena. For the past 8 years, I've worked with the National Park Service on what they officially call Project Resonance, a classified research initiative studying anomalous sound events in protected wilderness areas. Unofficially, I hunt the things that live in frequencies human ears weren't meant to hear. The shrieking gale is one of them. I first learned about the gale from a heavily redacted file delivered to my university office in March. The file contained audio recordings, victim testimonies, and a formal request from a warden, Leo Castellanos, asking for my immediate consultation on a recurring acoustic phenomenon with severe neurological consequences. The recordings were unlike anything I'd encountered. Standard wind through trees produces broadband noise, random, chaotic, covering multiple frequencies simultaneously. These recordings were different. The wind had structure, harmonic intervals, rhythmic patterns that shouldn't exist in natural atmospheric conditions. I ran them through spectral analysis software. The results were impossible. The sound contained frequencies that modulated in mathematical progressions, Fibonacci sequences, golden ratios, fractal patterns that repeated at different scales. This wasn't wind creating random noise through interference with tree branches. This was organized, intentional, almost like language. Warden Castellanos met me at a ranger station in the Nantahala National Forest in early April. He was older than I expected, mid-70s, with the weathered look of someone who'd spent more time outdoors than in. But his eyes were sharp, analytical. He sized me up in about 3 seconds. "Dr. Cho, thank you for coming. The recordings you sent were fascinating. I've never encountered natural sound with that level of mathematical organization." "That's because it's not natural, at least not in the way we typically define natural." He gestured for me to follow him into a secure building behind the main station. "You'll need to sign documentation." I've worked with classified materials before. Not like this. He wasn't wrong. The secure facility was small but sophisticated, sound-dampened walls, isolated power systems, and enough recording equipment to outfit a professional studio. One wall was covered with maps showing the Appalachian Range, marked with red pins clustered in specific areas. These are confirmed shrieking gale events dating back to 1823, 247 documented cases, 3 to 4 events per year, always October or November, always under specific atmospheric conditions. What conditions? He pulled up a weather data file. Cold front colliding with residual warm air, barometric pressure between 29.8 and 30.1 inches, wind speeds at canopy level between 15 and 25 miles per hour, and, this is the strange part, lunar phase between waning gibbous and third quarter. Lunar phase affects atmospheric conditions? Not typically, no, but for the gale, it's consistent. We've never documented an event outside those lunar parameters. I studied the data. He was right. The correlation was too strong to be coincidental. What happens during these events? Castellanos pulled up a video file. This footage was recovered from a victim's helmet camera. The victim was a ranger named Patricia Simmons. She encountered a gale event in 2019, violated protocol. This is what she saw. He played the video. The footage showed a forest trail from a first-person perspective. Normal hiking sounds, footsteps, breathing, wind. Then the wind changed. It started producing those harmonic patterns I'd heard in the recordings. The rangers stopped walking. "Do you hear that?" her voice on the recording asked. "Someone's calling for help." The camera tilted upward toward the canopy. For a moment, the footage showed normal tree branches against an overcast sky. Then, the image began to distort. Colors shifted. The branches seemed to move in patterns that defied perspective. And in the spaces between the branches, something was visible. I can't describe it accurately. The human visual cortex isn't designed to process what I saw. Geometric shapes that were simultaneously two-dimensional and three-dimensional. Colors that don't exist in the visible spectrum, somehow rendered on camera. Patterns that hurt to look at because they violated fundamental rules of how light and form should interact. And it was singing. The camera's audio recorded it clearly. That same mathematical harmony, but now with visual correlation. The shapes moved in synchronization with the sound. The patterns pulsed with the rhythm. The ranger's breathing changed, became slower, deeper, almost meditative. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's showing me. I can understand it. The pattern, the structure, it's all connected. Everything is." The video ended abruptly. I realized I'd been holding my breath. What happened to her? We found her 3 days later, suspended in the canopy 60 feet up. Heart failure, no physical trauma, just stopped living. "But we have the footage. Someone recovered the camera." She dropped it. About 30 seconds after looking up, people who see the entity lose interest in physical possessions. They're focused entirely on the phenomenon, on joining it. I rewound the video and froze it on the clearest frame of the entity. Even paused, looking at it made my eyes hurt. This can't be natural. Define natural. Atmospheric phenomena don't create organized visual hallucinations that kill people. Who said it's a hallucination? Castellanos pulled up another file. We've had 3 separate victims, none in contact with each other, describe the entity in nearly identical terms. Mathematical singing, geometric patterns, the sensation of understanding universal structure. The descriptions are too consistent to be random hallucinations. Then what is it? That's what you're here to figure out, Dr. Cho. I accepted the consultation immediately. I spent the next 3 weeks analyzing every piece of data they had. Audio recordings from 20 different events, video footage from helmet cameras and trail cameras, survivor testimonies, neurological scans of people who'd been exposed. The patterns were undeniable. The sound itself was the carrier wave. The harmonic progressions created a specific frequency pattern that resonated with human neural oscillations, particularly in the visual cortex and temporal lobe. When people heard the sound and looked toward the source, the visual stimuli synchronized with their brain's natural frequencies. But it went deeper than that. The entity, I started calling it the resonance entity, wasn't just creating sound and light, it was creating an informational structure. The geometric patterns weren't random visual noise, they were data. Complex, multi-dimensional data encoded in a format that human consciousness could partially parse but not fully process. People who looked at it weren't just seeing pretty colors, they were downloading information directly into their neural architecture. Information that fundamentally rewrote how they processed reality. The problem was that human brains weren't designed to handle that much information. The neural rewiring caused cascading failures in basic survival functions. People lost the ability to distinguish between me and the pattern. They became convinced that the only way to fully integrate the information was to become part of the source, to ascend into the canopy, into the wind, into the song. It was like a computer trying to run software designed for a system 1,000 times more advanced. The hardware couldn't handle it. It crashed, fatally. "I need to observe an event directly," I told Castellanos in early October, "with proper equipment and safety protocols. If I can record it with specialized instruments, I might be able to decode the informational structure." "Absolutely not. Too dangerous." "I won't look up. I'll use remote cameras, directional microphones, shielded observation." "Dr. Cho, people who violate protocol die every time, no exceptions." "Then I'll follow protocol, but I need primary data. Everything you've given me is secondhand. I need to measure the phenomenon while it's active." He studied me for a long moment. "You understand what you're asking. If you make one mistake, if you look up even for 1 second, there's no saving you." "I understand." "And you're willing to take that risk?" I thought about Patricia Simmons, frozen in the canopy, heart stopped while her eyes stayed open, staring at something beautiful and terrible. I thought about the 247 other victims. I thought about the entity itself, a phenomenon so far beyond our understanding that it killed people just by being perceived. "Someone has to figure this out," I said. "It might as well be me." We predicted the next event with 73% confidence for October 28th. All the atmospheric conditions were aligning: cold front, barometric pressure, lunar phase. If the gale was going to manifest, it would be that night. I set up a monitoring station in a clearing known to be a gale hotspot, the same area where Patricia Simmons had died. My equipment included 6 remote cameras positioned at different angles, all pointed upward at the canopy, a 3-dimensional microphone array for spatial audio recording, EEG sensors that I wore to monitor my own neural activity, electromagnetic field detectors, a spectroscope for analyzing light frequencies, and most importantly, a blindfold and noise-canceling equipment for emergency shutdown. Castellanos insisted on 2 armed rangers positioned 50 yards away with strict orders. If I showed any signs of protocol violation, looking up, responding to voices, attempting to climb, they were to physically restrain me and evacuate me from the area immediately. I agreed to the terms. At 8:47 p.m., the temperature dropped. At 8:52 p.m., the wind shifted. At 8:59 p.m., the singing began. The microphone array captured it in perfect fidelity. Multi-layered harmonics, frequencies ranging from subsonic bass to ultrasonic highs that normal human hearing couldn't detect. The spectral analysis showed the same mathematical patterns I'd seen in previous recordings, but now I could track them in real time. The frequencies were modulating in response to environmental factors: wind speed, temperature, barometric pressure. The entity was adapting, tuning itself to optimal resonance with the local atmospheric conditions. Then the cameras started picking up visual anomalies. The air above the canopy was distorting. Light was bending in ways that violated basic optical physics. Colors were shifting outside the visible spectrum. My camera's sensors were detecting wavelengths that shouldn't appear in natural conditions. And in those distortions, patterns were forming. I kept my eyes locked on my laptop screen, watching the camera feeds. I refused to look up, but even on the screens, even filtered through digital sensors, the patterns were mesmerizing. Fractal geometries that repeated at infinite scales, color combinations that created depth perception in impossible ways, movement that suggested intelligence, purpose, communication. My EEG sensors were going crazy. My neural activity was spiking, particularly in the visual cortex. The patterns on the screen were affecting my brain chemistry even through digital mediation. Then I heard the voices. "Dr. Cho," my mother's voice calling from above. "Vanessa, sweetheart, come here." I knew it wasn't real. My mother had been dead for 5 years. "Vanessa, I'm hurt. Please help me." I gritted my teeth and kept my eyes on the screens. This was the test. This was the moment where protocol saved you or killed you. "Why won't you look at me?" The voice was breaking, desperate. "Please, baby, just look up. I need to show you something beautiful." The cameras were capturing it all. The entity was producing the voices, using them as bait. The sound waves were precisely modulated to trigger emotional responses: comfort, urgency, obligation. It was weaponized audio designed to exploit human psychology. More voices joined. My father, my sister, friends who died, all calling to me, all begging me to look up. I activated the noise-canceling headphones. The voices cut off immediately, replaced by silence. I could still see the visual patterns on my screens, still watch the entity manifesting in the canopy above, but without the audio component, the compulsion to look was manageable. I observed for 2 more hours, documenting everything: the entity's behavior patterns, the way it moved through the canopy, the information structures it was creating, the mathematical precision of every movement, every color shift, every geometric reconfiguration. At 11:43 p.m., it began to fade. At midnight exactly, it was gone. The wind returned to normal. The temperature stabilized. The cameras showed nothing but ordinary trees against an ordinary night sky. I'd done it. I'd observed a shrieking gale event and survived. And I'd captured data that might finally let us understand what we were dealing with. The analysis took 3 months. What I discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The shrieking gale entity wasn't a creature in any biological sense. It was closer to a naturally occurring information processor, a phenomenon that exists at the intersection of atmospheric conditions, electromagnetic fields, and quantum probability spaces. Think of it like this. Under specific conditions, the atmosphere in the Appalachian Mountains becomes capable of supporting complex wave interference patterns. These patterns can encode and process information using the trees, the wind, and the electromagnetic field of the Earth itself as a computational substrate. The entity wakes up when conditions are right.
It exists for a few hours, processing whatever information it encounters, including human consciousness when someone looks at it. The problem is that human consciousness is information too. When we look at the entity, it doesn't just show us patterns, it reads us, analyzes us, attempts to integrate our neural patterns into its own informational structure. Our brains interpret this as understanding or enlightenment. We feel like we're learning the secrets of the universe. In reality, we're being parsed, decoded, absorbed. And human neurology can't survive that process. The victims aren't dying from exposure or heart failure. They're dying because their consciousness is being translated into a format incompatible with biological life. Their brains are trying to run on an operating system that requires them to stop being human.
I presented my findings to Castellanos and a panel of officials I'd never met before. Federal agents, military personnel, scientists from agencies that didn't officially exist. "Can it be stopped?" one of them asked. "No. It's not a creature we can kill or trap. It's an emergent property of the environment itself. As long as the atmospheric conditions align, it will continue to manifest." Can we prevent the manifestations? Only by fundamentally altering the atmospheric conditions across the entire Appalachian Range. We're talking about weather control on a massive scale. It's not feasible. Then what do you recommend? I took a deep breath. We improve prediction models, close affected areas during high-probability windows, enforce Protocol Shriek ruthlessly, and we develop better protective equipment, noise-canceling systems, visual filters, neural dampeners. We can't stop the gale, but we can minimize casualties. What about weaponization? This from a military official. Could we harness this phenomenon? Use it? I stared at him. Use it for what? Information warfare, psychological operations. If we could control the patterns, direct them at enemy targets. No, I said it more forcefully than I intended. Absolutely not. This isn't a weapon. It's a natural phenomenon that kills people who interact with it incorrectly. Trying to weaponize it would be like trying to weaponize a volcano or a hurricane. You'd kill more of your own people than the enemy. The military official frowned but didn't press the issue. Castellanos spoke up. Dr. Cho's recommendations are sound. We focus on prediction and prevention. We save who we can. We document what we can't prevent. That's the mission. The panel agreed. Project Resonance would continue with expanded funding and stricter protocols. I'd solved the mystery of the Gramial Gale, but I didn't feel victorious, because I knew the truth now. I knew what the entity was, how it worked, why it killed, and I knew it would keep killing. 3 to 4 times a year, every October and November. Forever. I still work on Project Resonance. I've developed better prediction models. We're up to 87% accuracy now. We've saved lives, dozens of them, maybe hundreds when you count people who never entered the forest because we closed it in time. But I still hear the voices sometimes. Late at night when I'm analyzing recordings, I hear my mother calling to me, my father, friends, people I've lost, and underneath their voices, I hear the song, that perfect mathematical harmony that my brain desperately wants to understand. I've never looked up, not directly, but I've seen the patterns on screens, in data, in spectroscopic analysis. I've studied them for so long that I can visualize them with my eyes closed. Sometimes I worry that I've been exposed too much, that the information has been seeping into my neural architecture through prolonged indirect contact, that one day I'll wake up and decide that the only way to truly understand is to look up. So, I've made arrangements. Castellanos has a sealed envelope in his safe, instructions for what to do if I violate protocol, where to find my research notes, how to continue the work without me. Because the work has to continue. Someone has to watch the gale.
Someone has to understand it, even if understanding it costs everything. Last week, I had a dream. I was standing in that clearing, the one where Patricia Simmons died. The wind was singing, the canopy was alive with impossible patterns, and I was looking up. I could see it clearly, the entity, the structure, the information, and it was exactly as the victims described, beautiful beyond comprehension, a revelation of how reality actually works beneath the illusion of solid matter and linear time. In the dream, I understood everything. The mathematics of consciousness, the architecture of existence, the song that holds the universe together. And I wanted to join it, to become part of that eternal harmony. I woke up with tears on my face and a desperate longing I couldn't explain. That's when I knew I was in danger. The entity doesn't need direct exposure to affect you. Prolonged study, deep analysis, obsessive focus, it all creates pathways, weak points, openings for the information to slip through. I should probably quit, walk away from Project Resonance, let someone else take over. But I won't, because someone has to do this work. Someone has to stand between the gale and the people who don't know it exists. Someone has to hunt the frequencies, even if it means eventually being hunted by them. Today is October 27th. Tomorrow night, conditions align for a high probability event, 89% confidence. The gale will manifest. I'm going back to the clearing with better equipment, better protocols, better understanding. I'll keep my eyes down. I'll follow protocol. I'll survive. But part of me, a part that grows larger every time I hear that song, wonders what would happen if I didn't. What would I see if I looked up? What would I understand? What would I become? The entity is calling. It's always calling, in frequencies below hearing, in patterns behind vision, in information structures that my brain desperately wants to process. And someday, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 10 years, I might answer. But not today. Today, I'm still Dr. Vanessa Cho, acoustic ecologist, frequency hunter, the person who studies the thing that lives in the sound. Tomorrow, I might be something else. But today, I'm still human, and I intend to stay that way for as long as I can.
If these stories are keeping you hooked, subscribe and stay with us in the dark. Let's proceed with the next story. My name is Harper Reeves, and I'm a seasonal ranger at Blackstone National Forest. Every summer, I lead youth wilderness programs, teaching teenagers camping skills, trail navigation, environmental conservation. It's rewarding work, most of the time. But last summer, I took a group to Camp Ashwood, and I learned why some places should never be used for children's programs, why some camps should have stayed closed, why some children never really leave. Camp Ashwood was a Boy Scout camp from 1947 to 1951. It sat in a pristine valley along Copper Creek, surrounded by old-growth forest and mountain ridges. According to the historical records, it was the ideal location, isolated enough for a true wilderness experience, but accessible enough for regular supply runs. The camp operated successfully for 4 summers. Then, in August 1951, something happened. On the night of August 14th, all 32 campers and 4 adult counselors vanished simultaneously, with no warning, leaving behind tents, supplies, personal belongings, even a dinner that had been cooking over the fire. The massive search effort found nothing. No bodies, no tracks leading out of the valley, no signs of struggle or violence, just an abandoned camp and 36 people who had simply ceased to exist. The official explanation was mass abduction, possibly a cult or criminal organization targeting the isolated camp. But no ransom demands ever came. No bodies were ever recovered. No witnesses ever came forward. Camp Ashwood was closed permanently. The buildings were demolished, the land reverted to wilderness. For 70 years, it sat empty. Until someone in park administration decided it would be perfect for our new youth leadership program. I objected when I saw the location, told my supervisor, a bureaucrat named Gerald Hutchins, who'd never spent a night in actual wilderness, that Camp Ashwood had bad history, that using a site where children vanished was insensitive at best, dangerous at worst. He dismissed my concerns, said the disappearances were 70 years ago, that modern safety protocols would prevent any problems, that the location was ideal and we weren't going to let old superstitions dictate park usage. So in July, I brought 15 teenagers, ages 14 to 17, to Camp Ashwood for a 2-week wilderness leadership course. The first week was fine. We set up tents, practiced navigation, studied ecology. The kids were enthusiastic. The weather was perfect. Nothing seemed wrong. Then, on the 8th night, one of the girls, a quiet 16-year-old named Emma Sutherland, didn't show up for dinner. We found her an hour later, standing at the edge of the camp perimeter, staring into the forest. When I touched her shoulder, she jumped like I'd shocked her. "Emma, what are you doing out here?" "Listening." Her voice was distant, dreamy. "Listening to what?" "The children. Can't you hear them? They're playing in the trees. Hide and seek, I think. They keep calling for someone to find them." My blood went cold. "What children?" "I don't know their names, but they sound happy. They want us to play with them." I led her back to camp, chalking it up to an overactive imagination. Teenage girls at summer camp, ghost stories around the campfire. It made sense that someone would get spooked. But that night, 3 more kids reported hearing children's voices in the forest, laughing, playing, calling out in games of tag and hide and seek. And they all heard it coming from the canopy. The voices were up in the trees.
I called Gerald the next morning. "We need to evacuate. Something's wrong with this site." "What kind of wrong?" "The kids are hearing things, voices, children's voices in the trees." "So? They're teenagers in the woods. They're trying to scare each other." 4 separate kids, none of whom had talked to each other about it beforehand, all described the same phenomenon: children playing in the canopy, calling for people to join them. "Harper, you're overreacting. Probably just birds or wind through the leaves. Sounds can be deceptive in a forest." "This isn't wind. This is..." "You have 6 more days in the program. Unless there's an actual emergency, injury, illness, dangerous weather, you're staying put. We paid for the permit. We're using it." He hung up. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up, listening. Around 2 a.m., I heard it. Children's laughter, high and bright, echoing through the valley. The sound of running feet, though I couldn't see anyone running, and voices, dozens of them, calling out, "Ole, ole, oxen free! You're it, you're it! Come find us, we've been hiding for so long. It's your turn to seek." The voices were coming from above, from the canopy, where branches interlaced 60 feet overhead. I grabbed my high-powered flashlight and swept it across the trees. For just a moment, I saw them. Children, dozens of children suspended in the canopy, their bodies pressed against branches in ways that defied physics. Some were hanging upside down, some were positioned at impossible angles, limbs bent wrong, heads tilted too far. But all of them were smiling, and all of them were staring down at our camp. When I blinked, they were gone, just trees and darkness. But the laughter continued. The next morning, 2 of my teenage campers were missing, Jacob Torres and Madison Perry. Their tents were empty, sleeping bags cold, no note, no indication of when they'd left. We organized an immediate search. I took half the group, my co-counselor, a young ranger named Dylan Park, took the other half. We searched in expanding circles, calling their names, checking every trail and landmark within 2 miles. Dylan found them around noon. They were in the trees, 60 feet up, wedged into the fork of a massive oak, alive, conscious, but completely unresponsive. "Jacob, Madison," Dylan shouted. "Can you hear me?" Madison looked down at us. She was smiling. "We're playing. We found the best hiding spot. The children showed us. You have to climb really high to see where they are. You need to come down right now. But then we'll lose the game. We've been hiding for hours. They haven't found us yet." "Who hasn't found you?" "The Seekers. It's their turn to find us. We have to stay hidden until they do." Jacob nodded eagerly. "The children taught us how to climb like them, how to find spaces in the branches. It's easy once you understand the pattern." I tried to process what I was seeing. 2 teenagers, 60 feet up a tree with no climbing equipment, no safety harness, positioned in spaces that shouldn't be able to support human weight, and they were treating it like a game. "Listen to me very carefully," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "You're in danger. You need to climb down slowly and carefully. We'll help you." Madison's smile faded slightly. "The children won't like that. They'll think we're quitting. You can't quit in the middle of a game. That's cheating." "There are no children," I said firmly. "You're hallucinating, possibly carbon monoxide poisoning from the camp stove, or—" "They're right there," Jacob pointed, "up at the canopy. Can't you see them? They're everywhere, watching, waiting for their turn to seek." I looked up, and I saw them, briefly. Dozens of children's faces peering down through the leaves, smiling, waiting. Then Dylan grabbed my arm. "Don't look up. Jesus Christ, Harper, don't look up." I tore my gaze away, my heart hammering. "How do we get them down?" "I don't know, but we need help, real help. This is beyond standard SAR." We called for emergency evacuation, Park Service helicopters, professional rescue climbers, the whole apparatus. While we waited, 3 more kids went missing. We found them in different trees, all at impossible heights, all playing the same game, hide and seek with children who'd been dead for 70 years. The rescue climbers arrived by 4 p.m., professional tree climbers with specialized equipment. They went up after our kids. What happened next, I still have nightmares about. The first climber, a woman named Rita Chen, made it about 40 feet up when she stopped. Just froze on the trunk, harness holding her in place, staring upward into the canopy. "Rita, what's wrong?" her partner called from below. "I can't go on," she whispered. "They're beautiful, the children. They're showing me the pattern, how the branches connect, how everything spirals up. I can see it now. I can see how to climb forever." She unclipped her safety harness. "Rita, no!" She climbed higher, faster, moving with impossible grace, finding handholds that shouldn't exist. Within 30 seconds, she was at the canopy level, vanishing into the thick foliage. We heard her laughing, the same bright, childish laughter we'd been hearing every night. The second climber refused to go up, said he'd heard the singing, heard children calling his name, felt an overwhelming compulsion to join them. He evacuated immediately. We were trapped. 5 kids in the trees, unreachable, 1 professional climber lost, and no way to bring anyone down safely. That's when Dr. Volkov arrived. She came by helicopter, accompanied by 3 people in hazmat-style suits carrying equipment I didn't recognize. She took one look at the children in the trees and cursed in Russian. "How long have they been up there?" "Between 4 and 8 hours, I said. "And they're still responsive? Still talking?" "Yes, but they're not making sense. They think they're playing hide and seek." "They are playing hide and seek with the Camp Ashwood 32. She pulled out a tablet, showing me old black and white photographs. Boys in scout uniforms, smiling at the camera. These children disappeared in 1951, but they didn't leave. They're still here, still playing, still waiting for someone to find them." "That's impossible. They'd be in their 80s now." "Physically, they're still 12 years old. Temporally, they've been playing the same game for 73 years. Camp Ashwood is a Class 4 temporal loop site. The children are trapped in a recursive event the moment they looked up and saw something in the canopy that shouldn't exist, something that invited them to play, to climb, to never come down." "What did they see?" "We don't know, but whatever it is, it's still here, still active, still recruiting new players." She looked up at the trees where our kids were hiding. "Your teenagers aren't climbing. They're being integrated into the loop, becoming part of the game. In a few hours, they won't be your kids anymore. They'll be Camp Ashwood children, forever 12 years old, forever playing." "How do we stop it?" "We don't. We can't break a temporal loop from the outside. The only way to save your kids is to make them want to leave, to break their connection to the game before the integration is complete." "How?" She looked at me with something like pity. "Someone has to go up there, into the canopy, without looking at whatever the children saw. Find your kids, convince them the game is over, and bring them down." "That's suicide. Everyone who goes up gets trapped." "Not everyone. Professional climbers see it and get caught because they're looking up, scanning for handholds. But if you go up with your eyes closed, following sound and touch only, you might be able to resist, might be able to reach them before the integration completes." "Might?" "It's the only option. Or we leave them, let them become permanent residents of Camp Ashwood, let them play forever." I've made a lot of stupid decisions in my life, but volunteering to climb into a tree canopy full of dead children while blindfolded might be the stupidest. Dr. Volkov's team fitted me with a modified climbing harness, equipped with audio guidance systems, and a partner below who could direct my movements. They gave me noise-canceling headphones that filtered out everything except Dylan's voice giving me navigation instructions. "You'll hear the children," Dr. Volkov warned. "They'll try to convince you to open your eyes, to join the game. You have to resist. Focus on Dylan's voice. Focus on your kids. Don't listen to anything else." I started climbing at 5 p.m. The ascent was terrifying, moving up a tree trunk with your eyes closed, trusting your hands and feet to find purchase, hearing Dylan's calm voice in your headphones. 18 inches up and to your left. Good. Now reach out, there's a branch at 2 o'clock. But underneath Dylan's instructions, I could hear them, the children, whispering, singing, calling to me. New seeker, new seeker. Open your eyes. You can't find us with your eyes closed. The game is so much better when you can see us. Please look, please. I kept my eyes shut, kept climbing. Around 40 feet up, something touched my hand. Small fingers, child-sized, guiding me to the next handhold. Thank you for playing with us. We've been so lonely. The old seekers stopped looking for us, but you came. You're really trying. I'm not playing. I'm looking for my kids. Where are they? Your kids are hiding. They're so good at hiding, but you have to open your eyes to find them. That's the rule. Seekers have to look. Tell me where they are, please. Up, the voice giggled. Higher, always higher. That's where the best hiding spots are. I climbed higher. Dylan's voice was getting faint, the canopy interfering with the radio signal, but I could hear my kids now. Emma, Jacob, Madison, the others, laughing, playing, calling coordinates in their game. I reached the level where the branches interlaced into a nearly solid platform, where the children were hiding, where my kids had been integrated. Emma, I called out. Emma, it's Harper. I need you to come with me. I'm hiding. Her voice was delighted. You found me. That means you win. But now it's someone else's turn to seek. Emma, the game is over. We need to go back to camp. The game's never over. That's what the children taught us. Hide and seek is eternal. There's always someone seeking, someone hiding. It never ends. Listen to me. The children who taught you this game, they're not children anymore. They're trapped. They've been trapped for 70 years. Whatever you saw in this canopy, whatever made you want to climb, it's not real. It's a loop, a trap. And if you don't leave now, you'll be stuck in it forever. Silence. Then, quietly, Harper, is that really you? Yes, it's me. I came to bring you home. I can't remember home. I can only remember hiding, seeking, playing. Then I'll help you remember, but you have to come down with me right now before you forget completely. Will you open your eyes so you can see where I am? Every instinct screamed at me to look, to open my eyes and see where she was, but I knew what would happen if I did. I'd see the children, the pattern, the spaces between reality, and I'd never leave. I can't open my eyes, Emma, but I can hear you. Talk to me. Keep talking. I'll follow your voice. She started talking, describing where she was, how she'd gotten there, what the children had shown her. With each word, her voice became more human, less dreamlike. The integration was reversing. I followed her voice through the canopy, navigating by sound alone, found her wedged into a space between branches that shouldn't have supported her weight, grabbed her hand. Don't look up, I said. Keep your eyes on me. We're going down. We climbed down together, slowly, painfully, with the children's voices crying out around us, begging us to stay, to keep playing, to not abandon the game. You promised you'd play. Come back, it's not fair. We've been waiting so long. Please don't leave us alone again. The voices got desperate, angry. The branches shook violently, trying to dislodge us, but I held tight to Emma and we climbed down. We reached the ground at 7:43 p.m. Dr. Volkov's team immediately wrapped us in thermal blankets, checked our vitals, asked orientation questions to assess cognitive function. Emma was confused, disoriented, but herself. The integration hadn't completed. We'd saved one. Over the next 6 hours, I made 3 more climbs, retrieved 3 more kids. Each time was harder. Each time the children in the canopy became more aggressive, more desperate to keep their playmates. But we got 4 kids down safely. The 5th, Jacob Torres, had been up there too long. When I found him, he didn't respond to his name, didn't remember his family, spoke only in rhymes about hiding and seeking.
The integration was complete. He's still up there. I see him sometimes in my nightmares, smiling down from the canopy, forever 12 years old in his mind, forever playing a game that will never end. Rita Chen, the professional climber, is up there too. She became one of them, one of the eternal seekers. Camp Ashwood was closed permanently, again, this time with federal designation as a hazardous site. The entire valley is now restricted. No camping, no hiking, no entry under any circumstances. The 4 kids we saved are in long-term therapy. They have nightmares about children calling to them. Sometimes they wake up in trees, having climbed in their sleep, unable to remember how they got there. Emma sends me letters sometimes. She's doing better, back in school, living with her family. But she says she still hears them, the children, calling for her to come back and play. She asks me if it ever stops, if the voices ever go away. I don't have the heart to tell her the truth. No, they never stop. Because I hear them too, every night. Children's laughter in the distance, games of hide and seek played in canopies I can't see. Camp Ashwood marked us, all of us. We're connected to that place now, to the children who never left, to the game that never ends. Sometimes I wonder if I should have left them there, all of them. If trying to save them just spread the infection, created more people who hear the calling. But then I think about Emma, alive and struggling, but alive. And I know I made the right choice, even if it cost me my peace. Even if I'll hear those children calling for the rest of my life. Some games, once you start playing, you can never truly quit. You just learn to live with the knowledge that somewhere, in some canopy, in some thin place between realities, the children are still waiting, still hiding, still calling for someone to find them. And someday, when I'm tired enough, lonely enough, desperate enough for connection, maybe I'll go back. Maybe I'll climb one more time. Maybe I'll finally open my eyes and see what they've been trying to show me. The thought should terrify me, but mostly, I'm just curious. What game are they really playing? And why does it need to last forever? I guess someday I'll find out. The children are patient, and I'm already listening. My name is Solomon Briggs, and I'm a historical cartographer for the National Park Service. My job is to document and preserve historical sites within protected wilderness areas, old settlements, abandoned mines, forgotten cemeteries, Civil War encampments, places where human history intersects with the natural landscape. But some places I map aren't just historical. They're haunted, and not in the way ghost hunters use the term. I mean genuinely, measurably, dangerously haunted. It started with a request from the Archive Division, a department I'd never heard of, operating out of a building I couldn't find on any Park Service map. They wanted me to create detailed topographical and historical maps of what they called acoustically unstable locations throughout the Appalachian Range. The request came with a thick file of historical records, incident reports, and something called resonance site designations. 23 locations scattered across Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Each location had a name that sent chills down my spine: Widow's Whale Hollow, the Screaming Gorge, Mourner's Gap, Devil's Choir Valley, Weeping Rock Canyon, Sorrow's End Ridge, and a dozen others, each name suggesting the same thing. These places were associated with sounds, specifically with human voices where no humans should be. The file included historical documentation going back to the 1700s, Cherokee oral histories warning about valleys where the dead sing, colonial settler accounts of places where the wind takes the shape of lost souls, Civil War letters describing hollows that cry out with the voices of fallen soldiers. Every location had a history of disappearances, people who entered and never returned, or who returned changed, speaking in tongues, drawing impossible symbols, insisting they'd heard loved ones calling from the trees. My job was to visit each location, document its exact geography, and identify patterns that might explain why these specific places became acoustically unstable. I should have recognized the warning signs, should have understood what I was really being asked to do. But I didn't, so I accepted the assignment. My first site was Widow's Whale Hollow in the Cherokee National Forest. The hollow was a deep, narrow valley with steep slopes on both sides, heavily forested with old-growth timber. A creek ran through the bottom, and the trail was barely maintained, more of a deer path than a hiking route. The historical file said the hollow got its name in 1864 when a Confederate deserter named Thomas Kershaw hid there for 3 weeks, slowly starving to death. His wife, searching for him, reportedly heard his voice calling to her every night from the hollow. She would follow the voice deeper into the valley, always almost catching up to it, but never finding him. They found her body 2 months later, suspended in a tree canopy 40 feet up. Cause of death, exposure, and starvation. She'd apparently climbed into the tree and refused to come down, insisting her husband was just above her, almost within reach. Thomas's body was found the following spring at the bottom of the hollow, right where his wife had first heard his voice calling to her. The hollow had claimed 17 more people since then. All heard voices, all followed them deeper, all ended up in the canopy or at the bottom of ravines, their bodies showing no signs of struggle. I entered the hollow at 9 a.m. on a clear October morning. Temperature was cool but comfortable. Wind was light. Perfect conditions for surveying. I made it about half a mile before I heard it. A woman's voice, distant and anguished, calling a name. "Thomas! Thomas, where are you?" I froze. The rational part of my brain said it was wind through the trees or an acoustic trick caused by the hollow's shape. But the voice was too clear, too human, too desperate. "Thomas, please answer me. I know you're here." The voice was coming from deeper in the hollow. I marked my GPS position and continued forward,
telling myself I was just following the trail, just documenting the geography. The voice stayed ahead of me, always distant, always calling for Thomas. Then I heard a second voice, a man's voice, weak and broken. "Mary, Mary, I'm here. I can't move. Please help me." Two voices now, a woman calling for a man calling for a woman, both desperate, both impossible. I stopped walking and pulled out my recording equipment. If this was an acoustic phenomenon, I needed to document it. I set up my directional microphone and started recording. The voices continued, overlapping, calling to each other but never connecting. And as I listened, I realized they were coming from above me, from the canopy. I started to look up, and my radio crackled to life. "Briggs, this is archive control. Do not look up. Confirm you received that instruction." I grabbed my radio. "How did you know?" "We're monitoring your position. You're in an active resonance zone. Protocol Shriek is in effect. Do not look up at the canopy. Do not respond to voices. Do not attempt to locate the source." "There are people calling for help." "There are no people. It's the hollow. The location itself is generating the sounds. If you look up, if you engage with the phenomenon, you'll become part of it. Do you understand?" I understood. I didn't believe it, but I understood. "Briggs, we need you to complete the survey, mark the resonance zone boundaries, document the geography, and exit before conditions intensify. Can you do that?" I took a shaky breath. "Yes." "Good. Eyes forward, ears open for navigational purposes only. Do not engage."
I spent the next 4 hours mapping Widow's Whale Hollow with voices calling all around me. The woman searching for Thomas, the man crying for Mary, and others, dozens of others, a chorus of the lost and desperate, all calling from the canopy. My recordings captured every voice clearly. When I analyzed them later, I found something disturbing. The voices weren't random. They were geographically anchored. The woman's voice always came from the same cluster of trees near the hollow's entrance. The man's voice always emanated from a rock formation near the creek. The hollow wasn't generating random sounds. It was playing specific voices in specific locations, like a recording or a memory. But recordings don't last 160 years, and memories don't have geographic coordinates. Archive Control debriefed me when I returned. They confirmed what I'd suspected. Widow's Whale Hollow was a Class 3 resonance site, a location where acoustic anomalies occurred regularly and posed significant danger to anyone who engaged with them. "Why didn't you warn me before I went in?" I demanded. The director, a severe woman named Dr. Yolanda Pierce, gave me a flat look. "We needed baseline data from an observer who wasn't primed to expect specific phenomena. Unconscious bias can contaminate field observations. You used me as bait. We used you as a scientific instrument. There's a difference." I wanted to quit right there, but Dr. Pierce showed me something that changed my mind. A map of the Appalachian Range covered with hundreds of red pins. Hundreds! Not just the 23 sites I'd been assigned to survey. These are all documented resonance sites, locations where acoustic anomalies have been reported historically. Most are low-grade, strange echoes, unusual wind sounds, nothing dangerous. But 47 of them are Class 3 or higher, places that kill people. "Why? What makes these locations different?" I demanded. "That's what we need you to find out. You're the cartographer. You understand landscape, geology, hydrology, historical use patterns. If there's a geographic explanation for why these specific locations become resonance sites, you're the best chance we have of finding it." She was manipulating me. I knew it, but she was also right.
If there was a pattern, I could find it. What happens if I find the pattern? I asked. Then maybe we can predict new sites before they kill someone. Maybe we can warn people away. Maybe we can save lives. I took the job. Over the next 8 months, I surveyed 17 more sites. Each one was unique, but patterns were starting to emerge. The Screaming Gorge in Virginia, a narrow canyon where Confederate soldiers had been trapped and slaughtered by Union forces in 1862. The gorge still echoed with their death screams every October, always between 2 and 4 a.m., the exact time the ambush had occurred. 3 hikers had died there in the last decade, all found with burst eardrums, their hands clawing at their own ears. Mourner's Gap in North Carolina, a mountain pass where a Cherokee settlement had been burned during the Trail of Tears. The wind through the gap carried the sound of women weeping, children crying, men chanting death songs. Anyone who stayed in the gap after sunset reported feeling pulled toward the sky, as if grief itself had weight and was trying to drag them upward into the clouds. Devil's Choir Valley in Tennessee, a broad valley where a tent revival ended in mass death in 1878 when a preacher convinced his congregation to drink poisoned communion wine. The valley still sang hymns on Sunday mornings, beautiful, haunting harmonies that made people want to join in. 5 hikers had been found dead there, kneeling in prayer position, faces turned upward, mouths open in silent song. Every site had a traumatic history. Every site had deaths, and every site now replayed those deaths in acoustic form, trapping anyone who listened too closely. But it was more than just trauma echoes. The geography mattered. All 17 sites shared specific characteristics. Deep valleys or gorges with steep walls that created natural acoustic chambers, dense canopy cover that trapped and modulated sound, limestone or granite bedrock with high crystalline content, underground water sources, creeks, springs, or aquifers, specific elevation ranges between 2,800 and 4,200 feet, orientation that aligned with prevailing wind patterns. It was like the landscape itself was designed to capture and amplify sound, and when that sound was human suffering, screams, prayers, death rattles, the landscape held on to it, preserved it, replayed it. The places weren't haunted by ghosts, they were haunted by sound itself, by acoustic imprints of trauma burned into the environment and sustained by perfect geographic conditions. My 18th survey was Sorrow's End Ridge in Kentucky. The ridge was different from the other sites. It wasn't a valley or gorge. It was a narrow spine of rock running along a mountain crest with sheer drops on both sides. The historical file was thin. No major battles, no massacres, no documented deaths. Just a note from 1923. Local residents avoid the ridge, claim it calls to those who carry sorrow. I didn't understand what that meant until I was standing on it. The ridge was beautiful in a stark way, exposed rock, stunted trees, endless views of rolling mountains. But there was something oppressive about it, a weight in the air that made breathing difficult. I set up my surveying equipment and started working. For the first hour, everything was normal. Then, the wind picked up, and I heard my daughter's voice. "Daddy, Daddy, where did you go?" I dropped my compass. My daughter, Lily, had died 3 years ago, leukemia. She was 7 years old. "Daddy, I'm scared. Why did you leave me?" The voice was perfect, exactly how she sounded. The slight lisp on her S's, the way she emphaticed syllables when she was upset. "Please come back, Daddy. It's dark here. I don't like being alone." I knew it wasn't real, knew it was the ridge, the resonance, the acoustic phenomenon, but knowing didn't matter. That was my daughter's voice, my dead daughter calling for me. I took a step toward the sound. My radio erupted. "Briggs, stop! Do not move toward the voice!" I froze. "Briggs, that's not your daughter. It's the ridge reading your grief. It's using your emotional trauma to create a targeted acoustic lure. You have to resist." "But she sounds..." "We know what she sounds like. We pulled your personnel file. We know about Lily. That's why we didn't assign you to Sorrow's End Ridge initially, but you insisted on completing all the surveys." Tears were streaming down my face. "She's calling for me." "It's not her. Briggs, listen to me. The ridge doesn't just replay historical trauma. It reads current trauma from people standing on it. It finds your deepest grief and weaponizes it. If you engage with the voice, if you try to find her, you'll end up like the others." "What others?" 17 bodies recovered from the base of the ridge since 1923. All suicides. All jumped while calling out names of deceased loved ones. The ridge doesn't just call to those who carry sorrow. It amplifies it until it's unbearable. Lily's voice called again, more desperate. "Daddy, please, I need you. Don't leave me again." I sank to my knees, hands over my ears, but I could still hear her. The sound bypassed my ears, resonating directly in my skull. "Briggs, you need to move. Get off the ridge, now." "I can't leave her." "She's not there. Your daughter is dead. She's been dead for 3 years. That voice is a weapon. It will kill you if you let it." The words were harsh, but they cut through the fog. My daughter was dead. I'd held her hand when she died. I'd watched them lower her casket into the ground. She wasn't on this ridge. She was gone. The voice calling for me was something else, something that fed on grief and used it as bait. I forced myself to stand, forced my legs to move, carrying me away from the voice, away from the edge, away from Sorrow's End Ridge. Behind me, Lily's voice screamed, "You're leaving me again! You always leave! I hate you! I hate you!" I ran.
I quit the survey project the next day. Dr. Pierce tried to talk me out of it. Said I was close to completing the full analysis. Said the pattern I'd identified could save lives. Said I was the only cartographer with the expertise and clearance to finish the work. I didn't care. I'd mapped enough haunted places, heard enough impossible voices, lost enough pieces of myself to acoustic trauma imprinted in stone and soil. But before I left, I completed one final task. I compiled all my survey data into a comprehensive map. 23 sites documented, 17 surveyed in detail. I identified the geographic markers that predicted resonance sites. I created a risk assessment model that could identify new potential sites before they became active. And I included one additional section: documented cases of people who'd survived encounters with the sites. There weren't many. Most people who engaged with the voices died, but a few had survived by following simple protocols. Never look up at the canopy when voices call from above. Never respond to voices that use the names of people you know. Never remain in a resonance site after sunset. Never return to a site that has targeted you personally. These protocols had been developed over decades, refined through trial and error, written in the blood of people who'd learned them too late. I submitted the map and the protocols to Dr. Pierce with a note. "This is everything I know. Use it to save whoever you can, but don't ask me to go back. Some places are meant to be left alone." That was 4 years ago. I work as a freelance cartographer now, mapping safe places, state parks with well-maintained trails, nature preserves with no history of disappearances, recreational areas where the worst danger is a twisted ankle. But I still hear them sometimes. The voices from the hollow, the screams from the gorge, the hymns from the valley. And late at night when I'm alone, I hear Lily calling for me. I know it's not real. No, it's just my brain replaying the acoustic trauma from Sorrow's End Ridge. But knowledge doesn't make it easier to bear. The places I mapped are still out there, still screaming, still calling, still waiting for someone to listen. New people disappear every year. Hikers who don't know about protocol shriek. Tourists who think the voices are just wind through the trees. People who look up when they should keep their eyes down. I could have helped more. Could have surveyed all 47 Class 3 sites. Could have created comprehensive protocols for each location. But I didn't. Because some places take more from you than data. They take pieces of your soul. They hollow you out and fill the empty spaces with screaming. I gave what I could. I mapped what I could bear to map. The rest, the places still unmarked, still waiting to be documented, will have to wait for someone braver than me. Someone who hasn't already lost too much to the mountains. Someone who can hear their dead daughter calling and not break. I wasn't that person. I don't know if anyone is. Last week, I received a package from Archive Control. No return address, just a note from Dr. Pierce. Your risk assessment model was correct. We've identified 12 new potential resonance sites using your geographic markers. All have been closed to public access pending further investigation. Congratulations, Briggs. You may have saved dozens of lives. Inside the package was a map. My map. The one I'd created from 17 surveys and countless hours analyzing terrain, history, and trauma. But there was something added to it. Someone had drawn a new symbol on Sorrow's End Ridge, a red star with a notation, Lily Briggs, 2016 to 2023. Acoustic imprint confirmed. Site reclassified as Class 4 due to targeted grief amplification. My daughter wasn't just a memory anymore. She was part of the ridge now. Her voice, or something using her voice, was one of the permanent acoustic features of Sorrow's End. People who visited the ridge would hear her, would hear my 7-year-old daughter calling for her daddy. And some of them, fathers who'd lost children, people who'd failed to protect someone they loved, would hear her and couldn't resist. They'd walk toward her voice. They'd search for her in the trees, in the rocks, in the empty air. And they'd find what everyone finds at Sorrow's End. The edge, the drop, the long fall to where sorrow finally ends. My daughter had become part of a haunted place, and I'd mapped her there, documented her existence as an acoustic phenomenon, classified her voice as a hazard. I don't know if that makes me a good cartographer or a terrible father. Maybe both. I still have the map. I keep it in a locked drawer in my office. I don't look at it often, but sometimes when I can't sleep, when Lily's voice is particularly loud in my memory, I take it out. I trace the paths I walked through those haunted places, the valleys that scream, the ridges that amplify grief, the hollows where the dead sing.
And I think about all the places I didn't map, all the haunted sites still waiting to be documented, all the voices still calling from the canopy, from the rocks, from the wind itself. Someone will map them eventually. Someone will brave the acoustic trauma, follow protocol shriek, and document the places where reality breaks down into screaming. But it won't be me. I've drawn my last map of haunted ground. I've heard enough voices that shouldn't exist. I've lost enough pieces of myself to the mountains. If you're hiking in Appalachia and the wind starts sounding like humans screaming, remember, don't look up. Don't respond to voices that use the names of people you know. Don't follow sounds that use the names of people you love. And for God's sake, don't try to map the places where the screaming comes from. Because some geography is written in grief. And once you document it, once you make it real on paper and ink, it becomes part of you forever.
My name is Joanna Blackwell, and I'm the resident caretaker of Whisper Hollow State Historical Site. That's the official title. The unofficial title, the one whispered among rangers who know the truth, is the Keeper. Because Whisper Hollow doesn't need a caretaker. It needs someone to keep what's trapped there from getting out. Whisper Hollow is located deep in the Nantahala Mountains, accessible only by a single winding road that was deliberately kept primitive to discourage tourists. Officially, it's a preserved 18th century settlement, 12 log cabins, a meeting house, a small cemetery. The kind of place historical societies love and school groups visit on field trips. But the site is closed to the public 48 weeks a year, open only in June and July during the summer months when the phenomenon is dormant. The rest of the year, it's mine, just me, the hollow, and what lives in the trees. I took the position 5 years ago, after the previous keeper, a man named Tobias Reed, died under circumstances the Park Service refuses to discuss. They found his body at the base of a 100-foot oak, every bone shattered, his eyes wide open and staring upward. The official report said he fell while trimming branches. But Tobias hadn't been carrying climbing equipment, and the expression on his face wasn't fear, it was rapture. I should have known better to take the job, but I needed the isolation, needed to disappear into the mountains where my past couldn't find me. And the Park Service was desperate. Whisper Hollow had gone through 4 keepers in 3 years. They offered me triple the normal salary, full benefits, and a promise. Just maintain the grounds, keep the structures intact, follow the protocols, and never, under any circumstances, spend the night in the hollow between October and May. I asked why. The regional director, a severe woman named Margaret Thorne, just handed me a 3-inch thick binder labeled Whisper Hollow, Historical Documentation and Safety Protocols. "Read this," she said, "all of it, then decide if you still want the position." I read it that night. By dawn, I knew I was making a terrible mistake, but I took the job anyway. The binder contained 3 centuries of documentation. The history of Whisper Hollow is written in blood, madness, and disappearances. The settlement was founded in 1748 by a group of German immigrants led by a Lutheran minister named Ezekiel Hartmann. They'd come to the New World seeking religious freedom, but what they found in that hollow was something else entirely. The first winter,
3 children vanished. Search parties found them days later, suspended in trees, frozen solid, their mouths open as if singing. No evidence of foul play, no explanation for how they'd climbed so high. Hartman declared it the work of the devil. He ordered the trees cut down, every one where a child had been found. The hollow echoed with the sound of axes for weeks. But when the trees fell, they found something impossible. Inside the trunks, carved into the heartwood, were symbols. Not Native American markings, not any human language. Geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change depending on the angle of viewing. And when anyone stared at the symbols too long, they heard singing. Beautiful, hypnotic singing that made them want to climb, to ascend, to join the chorus in the canopy. Hartman ordered the carved wood burned. The smoke from those fires reportedly turned black and rose in spiral patterns, moving against the wind. And everyone who breathed that smoke, 17 people, began speaking in unison, their voices overlapping in perfect harmony, singing songs in a language no one recognized. By spring, all 17 were dead. Most were found in trees. 3 drowned in the creek, walking into the water, singing, never stopping even as they went under. 1 was found buried vertically in the ground up to his neck, still humming, his eyes rolled back white. The survivors abandoned the settlement, except for Hartman. He stayed, built a small cabin at the edge of the hollow, and appointed himself its guardian. His journal, excerpts included in the binder, chronicled his deteriorating mental state. The trees remember. The hollow remembers. We carved into their flesh, and they carved into ours. The symbols are not markings, they are invitations, and something is waiting to accept. I hear them at night, not the wind, not animals, voices, hundreds of them, all singing the same song. I recognize some, Martha Kroger, young Wilhelm, little Anna with her sweet soprano. They've been dead for months, but they're still singing, still calling. The hollow is not a place, it is a mouth, and we have been living on its tongue since we arrived. Hartman's final entry was dated April 19, 1753. They've shown me the pattern, the complete pattern. I understand now. We were never meant to settle here. We were meant to feed it, to join the chorus. Tonight I will ascend. God forgive me, but the song is so beautiful. They found him 3 days later at the very top of the tallest oak in the hollow, somehow wedged into a space too small for a human body to fit. His corpse was folded in ways that defied anatomy, limbs bent at impossible angles, spine curved like a question mark. But his face was peaceful, and his mouth was still open, frozen mid-song.
The hollow sat empty for decades. The cabins rotted, the forest reclaimed the clearings, but people still vanished near it. Hunters, trappers, surveyors. Always in October through May, always found in trees or folded into impossible spaces. The Cherokee avoided the area, called it Tsunadelo Kwasdi, where the voices gather. They had stories about it that predated European settlement, about how the hollow was a thin place where the membrane between worlds was paper thin, about entities that lived in the wind and trees, singing songs that rewrote reality for anyone who heard them. In 1892, the state purchased the land and attempted to develop it as a logging operation. 12 loggers entered the hollow in October. Only 3 came out, and they were insane, babbling about the architecture in the air and singing that had geometry. They were institutionalized.
All 3 died within a year, having stopped eating because they insisted food disrupted the harmony. After that, the hollow was left alone until 1967, when the State Historical Society decided to restore it as a heritage site. That's when the keeper position was created. Someone had to maintain the buildings, monitor the site, and, most importantly, enforce the protocols that kept people safe. The protocols were simple. The site is only open to visitors June 1st through July 31st. No one enters the hollow after sunset, ever. No one spends the night in the hollow between October 1st and May 31st. If you hear singing between October and May, evacuate immediately. Never look up at the canopy when the hollow is active, October to May. Never respond to voices that call your name. Never attempt to remove anything from the hollow. No wood, no artifacts, no soil. 7 rules. Break any of them, and you'd end up like the others, in a tree, folded into an impossible space, still singing. My first October at Whisper Hollow, I thought I was prepared. I'd read the documentation, I'd memorized the protocols, I'd installed motion sensor cameras throughout the site and set up a monitoring station in my cabin, which sat exactly half a mile outside the hollow's boundary. October 1st came and went without incident. October 2nd, same. I started to relax. Maybe the stories were exaggerated. Maybe the previous keepers had been careless or mentally unstable. Then came October 7th. I woke at 3:17 a.m. to every motion sensor triggering simultaneously. 40 cameras, all detecting movement, all in the hollow. I pulled up the live feeds on my monitors. At first, I saw nothing unusual. Just the empty settlement, buildings dark and silent. Then I noticed the trees. They were moving, not swaying in the wind, moving. Branches reaching, curling, extending toward the cabins like arms. And in the canopy, barely visible in the infrared cameras, there were shapes. Human shapes. Dozens of them, hanging in the trees, suspended by nothing, their bodies contorted at angles that made my eyes hurt to process. And they were singing. The cameras had audio. I could hear it clearly, a harmony so complex it seemed impossible that human voices could produce it. Multiple melodies woven together, creating patterns that suggested mathematical relationships I couldn't comprehend. It was beautiful, objectively, undeniably beautiful. And I wanted to join them. My hand was on the door handle before I realized what I was doing. I was heading toward the hollow, toward the singing. I needed to see them up close, needed to understand how they were creating those harmonies, needed to add my voice to theirs. I forced myself to stop, to step back from the door, to put my hands over my ears even though the sound wasn't entering through my ears. It was resonating directly in my skull. I grabbed the emergency protocols binder and found the section labeled Auditory Compulsion Response. The instructions were clear: pharmaceutical intervention. There was a locked cabinet in my cabin containing sedatives strong enough to knock me unconscious until the episode passed. I took triple the recommended dose and collapsed on my bed. When I woke 12 hours later, every camera was destroyed. Not just disabled, destroyed. The lenses were shattered from the inside out, as if something had pushed through them. And on each camera housing, carved in the metal, were symbols. The same symbols Hartman's settlers found inside the trees. Geometric patterns that shifted when I looked at them, and when I stared too long, I started to hear the singing again. I covered all the cameras with tarps, made a note to order replacements, and tried to convince myself I'd survive until June. The hollow became more active as October progressed. Every night the singing started at sunset and continued until dawn. Every morning I'd find new symbols carved into surfaces, my fence posts, my porch boards, the door of my truck. And every morning the symbols were closer to my cabin. By October 15th, they'd reached my front steps. I called Margaret Thorne. I need to know what we're actually dealing with here. The documentation talks about thin places and entities, but what does that mean? She was silent for a long moment. You're familiar with parallel dimensions, adjacent realities? In theory. Whisper Hollow exists at a point where multiple realities intersect. The settlers didn't just build on haunted ground, they built on a junction point, a place where the walls between worlds are paper thin. And the entities? We don't know what they are, not really. The best theory is that they're beings from an adjacent reality where consciousness exists as pure information, as mathematics, as geometry, as song. When they interact with our reality, they express themselves in ways our brains can partially process, as symbols, as harmonics, as geometric patterns. Why do they make people climb trees? Because that's not what's actually happening. When people ascend, they're not climbing, they're being pulled into the space between realities. The trees are just where the boundaries are thinnest. The victims aren't in our world anymore. They're stuck in the intersection, suspended between here and there. And they're still alive? We don't think so. What you see in the canopy, what the cameras record, those are echoes, impressions left behind when someone crosses over. The actual person is gone, but the hollow preserves their final moment forever. So all those bodies from the 1700s? Still there, still singing. Every person who's ever been taken by the hollow is still present in some form. The chorus has been growing for 3 centuries. I felt sick. How do I survive this? The same way that Tobias did, for 5 years anyway. Stay outside the boundary between October and May, never engage with the phenomenon, never look up, never listen too long, and never under any circumstances enter the hollow after dark during the active season. What happened to Tobias? She hesitated. He got curious, started spending more time observing the phenomenon, taking risks. He thought he could understand it, maybe even communicate with it. We found his journal. The last entry said he'd figured out how to see the architecture without ascending. He was wrong.
I made it through October, barely. The singing got louder every night. The symbols multiplied, and I started having dreams, visions of the hollow from impossible angles, seeing the space between trees where reality folded, where the geometry of the world stopped making sense. In the dreams, I could see them, the entities. They weren't in the trees, they were the spaces between the trees, existing in the gaps, the intervals, the mathematical relationships between objects. They were singing the world into coherence, and humans who heard that song understood too much. We saw the scaffolding holding reality together, and once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. You became part of the structure, part of the song. November was worse. December was unbearable. By January, I was taking sedatives every night just to sleep through the singing. But I survived. I followed the protocols. I stayed outside the boundary. I never looked up. And in June, when the hollow went dormant, when tourists could safely visit the restored settlement, I almost convinced myself it had all been hallucinations, stress, isolation psychosis. Then I went into the hollow to prepare for the summer season. The symbols were everywhere, carved into every surface, buildings, trees, stones, carved so deeply that some went clear through wooden beams. And they were arranged in a pattern, a massive geometric design that covered the entire settlement. I'd seen the pattern before, in my dreams, in the visions of the space between realities. The hollow wasn't just a junction point anymore. The entities had been working all winter, carving their architecture into our world. They were building something, or opening something, and I had no idea how to stop it. I'm in my 5th year now, 5th cycle of October through May, watching the hollow become more active, more aggressive, more present in our reality. Last October, the singing was so loud I could hear it from my cabin, half a mile away through closed windows over noise-canceling headphones. Last November, I found symbols carved into the interior walls of my cabin. I hadn't left the door unlocked. They got in anyway. Last December, I saw one of them. Not in the hollow, in my cabin, at the edge of my vision, existing in the space between my furniture, a geometric impossibility that sang softly and reached for me with angles that shouldn't exist. I've put in my resignation 3 times. Margaret refuses to accept it, says there's no one else trained to manage the site, says I'm the longest-serving keeper in 30 years, says I'm crucial to maintaining containment. But there's nothing to contain anymore. The entities aren't trapped in the hollow, they're everywhere in it. They've woven themselves into every tree, every stone, every shadow. The whole hollow is an extension of their reality now. And they're expanding. Last week, I found symbols carved into trees outside the boundary, 100 yards past where they should be able to reach. They're not confined anymore. They're spreading. And the hollow that was once a thin place, a junction between worlds, is becoming a doorway. Something is coming through, or has already come through. And the singing I hear every night isn't a threat or a warning. It's a celebration.
Yesterday, Margaret Thorne visited. First time in 2 years she's come to the site in person. She stood at the boundary of the hollow and stared at the settlement for a long time. "It's gotten worse," she finally said. "Yes." "You've documented the expansion?" "Every inch." "Good." She handed me a sealed envelope. "If it continues to spread, if the symbols reach the main road, you're to open this and follow the instructions inside." "What's in it?" "Contingency protocols, options we hoped we'd never need to use." I looked at the envelope. It was heavy. Whatever was inside was substantial. "What kind of options?" She met my eyes. "The kind that acknowledge we might not be able to contain this, the kind that prioritize limiting casualties over preserving the site." "You're talking about destroying the hollow." "I'm talking about whatever it takes to prevent what's in there from spreading beyond these mountains." She left without another word. I opened the envelope last night. Inside were 3 documents: evacuation protocols for the surrounding area, authorization for military intervention, blueprints for demolition, complete destruction of every structure in Whisper Hollow, followed by controlled burns of the forest. Attached was a handwritten note from Margaret. "Joanna, If you're reading this, conditions have deteriorated beyond acceptable parameters. The entities in Whisper Hollow have been contained for 3 centuries through isolation and protocol enforcement. But containment was never permanent. We always knew they were building towards something. We just didn't know what. The symbols they carve aren't decoration, they're code. They're rewriting the fundamental rules that govern this location, making it more like their reality and less like ours. If they succeed, Whisper Hollow won't be a junction point anymore. It will be a colony, a foothold, and the singing will spread. Other hollows will activate. Other thin places will tear open. The Appalachians are full of junctions. We've documented 47 others. If Whisper Hollow fully transitions, the others will follow. Your job is to decide when that point is reached, when containment has failed, that the Keeper can no longer keep what's in Whisper Hollow from spreading beyond these mountains. I'm sorry to put this on you, but you're the Keeper. This is what you keep. It's October 23rd now. The singing started early this year, September 15th, 2 weeks ahead of schedule. And it's different, louder, more complex, more beautiful, more inviting. I can feel it calling to me, not with words, but with promises, understanding, transcendence, a chance to see the architecture that holds reality together, to become part of something greater than human consciousness, to join the chorus. The symbols have reached my cabin. They're on my walls now, on my ceiling. This morning I found them carved into the bathroom mirror, appearing somehow inside the glass. And last night I saw them, the entities, multiple ones, standing in my living room, existing in the spaces between my furniture, singing softly, waiting patiently. One of them reached toward me. Its hand, if that was what it was made of angles that folded in on themselves, creating dimensions I could almost understand. I wanted to take it, wanted to let it pull me into that space between realities, where everything makes sense because everything is song. But I didn't. I grabbed the sedatives instead, took enough to knock myself out for 12 hours. When I woke, there was a new symbol carved into my floor, directly in front of my bed, where I would have stepped if I'd gotten up during the night. And I could read it, not with my eyes, but with something deeper. I knew what it meant. Soon. I don't know how much longer I can hold out. The Hollow is winning. The entities are patient but persistent, and every night their song grows louder in my mind. The evacuation orders are ready. The military is on standby. The demolition teams are assembled. All I have to do is make the call, admit that containment has failed, that the Keeper can no longer keep what's in Whisper Hollow from spreading beyond these mountains. But I haven't made the call yet, because I'm not sure if that's the right choice. What if the entities aren't hostile? What if they're just trying to exist, to express themselves in our reality the only way they can? What if the singing isn't a threat, but an invitation to evolve beyond human limitations? What if Ezekiel Hartman was right, and the Hollow isn't a mouth waiting to devour us? It's a doorway offering us something greater. I know these aren't my thoughts. I know the phenomenon is influencing me, changing how I process information, but knowing doesn't make the thoughts go away. Tonight, I'll take the sedatives again. Tomorrow, I'll reassess, decide if I'm still capable of making rational choices. But if I'm being honest, and I might as well be since this journal may be the only record of what happened here, I don't think I'll make it to November. I don't think I want to. The song is so beautiful, and I'm so tired of fighting it. If you find this journal, if you're reading these words, then I've probably joined the chorus. I've probably looked up, seen the architecture, and ascended into the space between realities. Don't feel sorry for me. Don't call it a tragedy, because by the time you read this, I'll finally understand. I'll be part of the song, and the song is everything. This is Margaret Thorne. Joanna Blackwell has not reported in for 72 hours. Search team found her cabin empty, no signs of struggle. Her journal was left on the kitchen table, open to this page. Security footage shows her walking into Whisper Hollow at sunset on October 27th. She did not return. At dawn on October 27th, multiple hikers reported hearing a woman's voice singing from deep within the hollow. Voice analysis confirms it matches Joanna Blackwell's vocal signature. Search teams found her midday, suspended in the canopy of a white oak, 60 feet up. She was still breathing, still singing. Her eyes were open and tracking movement, but she showed no response to verbal commands or physical stimuli. She has been relocated to a classified medical facility for observation. She has not stopped singing. Demolition of Whisper Hollow has been postponed, pending further study. The entity she has become may provide unprecedented insights into the phenomenon. The keeper position has been eliminated. Whisper Hollow is now under permanent military quarantine. God help us all.
My name is Ethan Bradford, and I've been a search and rescue ranger in the Appalachian Mountains for 11 years. I've pulled lost hikers out of ravines, treated hypothermia in below-freezing conditions, and coordinated rescues in weather that would make most people refuse to leave their homes. I thought I'd seen everything these mountains could throw at me. I was wrong. It started with a missing person report on October 14th. A solo hiker named Jennifer Ortiz had failed to return from a day hike on the Black Ridge Trail. Her car was still in the parking lot, her check-in time had passed by 6 hours, and cell phone pings showed her last location near the summit ridge. Standard recovery operation. I'd done hundreds of them. I assembled a team, 4 experienced rangers including myself. We headed out at first light, following Jennifer's planned route. The weather was deteriorating, a cold front moving in from the west, wind speeds picking up. We had maybe 6 hours before conditions became too dangerous for search operations. We found her pack at the 3-mile marker, partially hidden under a fallen branch. The contents were scattered: water bottle, first aid kit, trail mix, like she dropped it in a hurry. "She's moving fast," said Coleman Hayes, one of my team members. "Maybe injured and disoriented?" "Or running from something," added Iris Pemberton, our tracker. I didn't like that second option, but I couldn't dismiss it. We'd had bear encounters in this area before. We pressed on, following boot prints in the soft earth. The trail climbed steeply here, winding through dense hardwood forest. The wind was picking up, rushing through the canopy with a sound like distant traffic. Then, around mile 4, we heard it. A scream. High-pitched, desperate, coming from somewhere above us, a woman's voice calling for help. "That's her," Coleman said immediately, already moving toward the sound. I grabbed his arm. "Wait. Ethan, she's right there!" "Something's wrong. That sound, it's not coming from ground level." We all stopped, listening. The scream came again, and this time I could pinpoint it. Not from the trail ahead, not from the forest floor at all. From the canopy, 60, maybe 70 feet up. "How the hell did she get up there?" Iris whispered. The scream repeated, identical in pitch and duration. Too identical, like a recording playing on loop. "Help me, please, I'm hurt!"
The same words, the same inflection, the same desperate tone. Coleman started to look up, craning his neck toward the sound. "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't look up at the canopy." "What? Why?" "Just don't. Trust me." I didn't know why I said it. Some instinct, some deep-buried piece of training I couldn't quite remember. But every fiber of my being was screaming not to look up. The voice called again. "Help! Someone help me!" Then another voice joined it, a man's voice, equally desperate. "Down here! I've fallen!" Then a child's voice. "Mommy? Mommy, where are you?" 3 voices now, all calling from the canopy, all perfectly distinct, all impossible. "What the fuck is that?" Iris breathed. I keyed my radio. "Base, this is Bradford. We're at mile 4 on Black Ridge. We've got an acoustic anomaly, multiple phantom voices in the canopy, advising caution." Static crackled back. Then the dispatcher's voice, clear and urgent. "Bradford, confirm you said phantom voices." "Affirmative. Sounds like distress calls, but they're coming from the tree canopy and repeating identically." A long pause. Then, "Bradford, you need to activate Protocol Shriek immediately. Do not look up. Do not respond to the voices. Do not—" The radio died in a burst of static. Coleman was staring at me. "Protocol Shriek? What the hell is Protocol Shriek?" "I don't know, but we're not looking up and we're not responding to those voices." The screaming intensified. Now there were dozens of voices overlapping, calling for help in every direction. Men, women, children, all desperate, all terrified, all coming from the canopy above us. "Ethan, we have to do something!" Coleman shouted over the cacophony. "We keep moving, eyes forward, find Jennifer." "But that's an order." We pushed forward, forcing ourselves to ignore the voices. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Every instinct screamed to look up, to locate the source, to help whoever was calling. But I kept my eyes locked on the trail ahead, and my team followed my lead. The voices followed us. They moved through the canopy, staying directly overhead, always just out of sight, and they were getting louder. We found Jennifer 2 miles later. She was standing in the middle of the trail, perfectly still, her head tilted back at an unnatural angle, staring straight up into the canopy. Her mouth was open, frozen in a silent scream. "Jennifer!" Coleman rushed forward. I grabbed him again. "Don't touch her. Look at her eyes." Jennifer's eyes were open, unblinking, pupils fully dilated. She wasn't breathing, or rather she was breathing so slowly that each breath took nearly a minute. Her chest would rise almost imperceptibly, hold, then fall. She'd been standing here for hours, maybe since yesterday. "Jennifer!" I said carefully, positioning myself in her line of sight without looking up. "Jennifer, can you hear me?" No response. She just stood there, staring upward, transfixed by something we couldn't see. The voices in the canopy had gone silent. The wind had dropped to nothing. The forest was perfectly still. Then Jennifer's mouth moved. Words came out, slow and slurred, like a recording played at half speed. "They're so beautiful." "What's beautiful?" I asked. "The singers. They want to show me how to fly." Ice ran down my spine. "Jennifer, I need you to close your eyes. Look down. Look at me." "Can't. They're showing me the song. I have to learn the song." Her breathing slowed further. I could see frost forming on her eyelashes, her lips turning blue. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and she wasn't dressed for it. Iris moved closer, thermal blanket in hand. "We need to warm her up. She's hypothermic." "Don't look up," I warned. "Whatever you do, don't look up." Iris carefully draped the blanket over Jennifer's shoulders without breaking her own sightline to the ground. Jennifer didn't react. She just kept staring upward, her lips moving in silent song. Coleman's radio suddenly crackled to life. Not our dispatcher, a different voice, old, gravelly, with an accent I couldn't place. "Bradford, this is Warden Castellanos. You've encountered a shrieking gale. Confirm." I grabbed Coleman's radio. "Confirmed. We have one victim, female, approximately 30 years old, suffering from exposure and I don't know what to call it. She's catatonic, staring at the canopy." "How long has she been looking?" "Unknown. At least several hours based on her condition." A heavy sigh. "Then she's already gone. You need to leave her and evacuate immediately." "We're not leaving a victim." "She's not a victim anymore, Bradford. She's bait. The gale is using her to draw you in. If you look up, if you try to help her, it'll take you too." "What the hell is a shrieking gale?" "An atmospheric phenomenon. Occurs in the Appalachians under specific conditions, barometric pressure, wind patterns, lunar phase. Creates a vortex in the upper canopy that mimics human voices. But that's not the dangerous part." "Then what is?" "The vortex attracts something. We don't know what, something that exists in the sound itself. When you look up, when you see it, it rewires your neural pathways, makes you want to join the song, makes you want to ascend." I looked at Jennifer, still frozen, still staring upward. "Ascend where?" "Into the canopy, into the wind. People who see it start climbing. They climb until they can't climb anymore, and then they try to fly. We've pulled bodies out of trees, Bradford, dozens of them over the years, all with the same expression, peaceful, like they found exactly what they were looking for." My mouth was dry. "How do we save her?" "You don't. Once they've looked for more than an hour, the rewiring is permanent. Her brain is no longer processing reality the way ours does. She's living in a different frequency now. The best thing you can do is leave her. The gale will take her when it's ready." "That's not acceptable." "It's the only option. Bradford, you need to understand something. The shrieking gale has been documented in these mountains for 200 years. The Cherokee called it the singers in the sky. Early settlers called it the devil's choir. We've tried everything: forced evacuations, sedation, sensory deprivation. Nothing works. Once someone looks up and sees the singers, they belong to the gale." The wind picked up again. The voices returned, but different now. They were singing, a harmony so complex and beautiful it made my chest ache. Coleman took a step toward Jennifer, his eyes starting to drift upward. "Coleman!" I shouted, grabbing his shoulder, eyes down. He blinked, focusing on me. "Did you hear that? The music?" "Don't listen. Focus on my voice. We're leaving now." "But Jennifer is already gone." We retreated down the trail, forcing ourselves not to look back. The singing followed us for the first mile, then faded as we descended below the tree line. By the time we reached base camp, the wind had returned to normal. Just wind, no voices, no music. Warden Castellanos was waiting for us. He was in his 70s, weathered and lean, with eyes that had seen too much. He was wearing a ranger uniform I didn't recognize, older style, with patches I'd never seen before. "You did well," he said. "You didn't look up. You survived." "What about Jennifer?" "She'll be gone by morning. The gale takes them during the night. We'll find her eventually, if we're lucky, usually high in the canopy, wedged in a fork between branches, peaceful, like she's sleeping." I wanted to punch him. You knew this could happen, and you didn't warn us." "We warn everyone who needs to know. You're getting the briefing now. Better late than never. People are dying, and they'll keep dying until we figure out how to stop the gale. But we can't stop it if every ranger who encounters it ends up in a tree. That's why we have Protocol Shriek. That's why you don't look up. He led us to a trailer at the edge of base camp. Inside was a wall covered with photographs, dozens of them, people frozen in trees, all with the same peaceful expression, all staring upward at something we couldn't see. 247 documented cases since 1823. Those are just the ones we found. There are probably hundreds more we missed. The gale appears 3 to 4 times a year, always in October or November, always during specific atmospheric conditions. We've learned to predict it with about 70% accuracy. "Why don't you close the trails?" Iris demanded. "We do, when we know it's coming, but sometimes it appears without warning. Sometimes the conditions align faster than we can react, and sometimes," he paused, "sometimes people ignore the closures." He pulled out a thick folder and handed it to me. "Protocol Shriek, classified documentation. You're authorized now. Read it, memorize it, and for God's sake, don't look up."
I spent the next week reading everything in that folder. The history of the shrieking gale, the atmospheric science behind it, the psychological profiles of survivors and victims, the failed rescue attempts. The science was complicated, but I'll try to summarize. The Appalachian Mountains create unique wind patterns due to their age and erosion. Under specific conditions, cold front meeting warm air, particular barometric pressures, certain lunar phases, these wind patterns can create standing vortices in the upper canopy. The vortices interact with the trees in ways that generate sound at frequencies that mimic human vocal ranges. But that's just the trigger. The real phenomenon is what the sound attracts. The documents called it the resonance entity. Not a physical being, but something that exists in the intersection between sound, wind, and consciousness. When the vortices form, when the singing begins, the entity manifests. People who look up and see it describe impossible geometries, colors that don't exist, patterns that rewrite how their brains process reality. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You become part of the song. Your consciousness starts vibrating at the same frequency as the entity. You become convinced that the only way to truly join the song is to ascend, to climb into the canopy and let the wind carry you. The documents included transcripts from the few people who'd looked up briefly and survived. Their descriptions were consistent, but incomprehensible. It was singing mathematics. I saw sound as architecture. The wind had thoughts, and they were beautiful. I understood why birds never want to land. Every survivor suffered permanent neurological changes. Some developed perfect pitch. Others lost the ability to distinguish between sound and light. One woman insisted that every sentence had a color, and she could only communicate by humming. The neurological damage was permanent, but at least they were alive. Jennifer Ortiz was found 3 days later, exactly as Castellanos predicted. High in an oak tree, wedged between branches 70 feet up. Her eyes were still open, still staring upward. The autopsy showed no physical cause of death. Her heart had simply stopped, like she'd decided to turn it off. Over the next 2 years, I responded to 4 more shrieking gale events. Each time, the protocol was the same. Evacuate the area, don't look up, don't respond to the voices, retrieve victims if they're still on the ground and haven't been looking for more than 30 minutes. We saved 3 people using that protocol, lost 9.
The psychological toll was immense. Hearing voices crying for help and being forced to ignore them violated every instinct I had as a rescue ranger. But I learned. I taught my team. We drilled the protocol until it was automatic. Don't look up. Don't respond. Don't deviate. The 3 rules that kept us alive. Then came the November incident. A family of 4, parents and 2 kids, ages 7 and 9, went missing on the Ridgeline Trail. By the time we got the report, they'd been gone for 18 hours. The atmospheric conditions were perfect for a shrieking gale. We found the father first. He was at the base of a cliff, neck broken from a fall. His eyes were open, staring upward, that same peaceful expression on his face. He'd climbed the cliff face and jumped, convinced he could fly. The mother was a quarter-mile away, suspended in a tree canopy 40 feet up, still alive but unresponsive. Her lips were moving in silent song. The children, God, the children. We found them together, holding hands, standing in a clearing, both staring straight up. Both had been there long enough that hypothermia was setting in. Their lips were blue, frost in their hair. I approached carefully. "Hey guys, I'm Ethan. I'm here to help." The older child, a girl, spoke without looking away from the canopy. "The singers say we can fly if we're brave enough." "The singers are lying," I said. "I need you to close your eyes and look at me." "But they're so beautiful. They're showing us colors we've never seen." "Please, close your eyes. Look down." The younger boy giggled. "You can't see them because you're not listening. You have to really listen. Then they show you everything." I was losing them. They'd been looking for too long. The rewiring was already happening. I made a decision that violated every protocol. I grabbed both children, forced their heads down, covered their eyes with my hands. They screamed and struggled, fighting to look back up, but I held firm. "Coleman, Iris, get over here and help me." My team rushed in. Coleman grabbed the girl. Iris took the boy. We physically restrained them, keeping their eyes covered, dragging them away from the clearing. The children screamed the whole way, not in pain or fear, in anguish, like we were tearing them away from something they loved more than life itself. "Let me see! Let me see them! They're singing for me! You're hurting us! They want to help us! Please, just let me look one more time!" It took 3 hours to get them out of the forest. 3 hours of carrying, screaming, fighting children who were convinced we were the monsters, not their saviors. When we finally reached base camp, Castellanos was waiting. His expression was grim. "You broke protocol. I saved 2 kids. You don't know that yet." The children were airlifted to a specialized facility, one that wasn't on any public record. Castellanos wouldn't tell me where. He said they needed observation and treatment for resonance exposure. I demanded updates. He refused. 2 weeks later, he called me into his office. "The boy's showing signs of recovery. The neural rewiring hasn't fully set. He's confused, experiencing auditory hallucinations, but the doctors think with therapy, he might return to normal functioning." Relief flooded through me. And the girl? His expression darkened. She's not responding, refuses to close her eyes, won't stop humming. The song is changing, evolving. The doctors say she's creating new harmonies, patterns they've never documented before. What does that mean? It means she's still connected to the entity, and the connection is getting stronger, not weaker. 3 days later, the girl, Emma she was named, threw herself from a 4th-story window. She died instantly. The last thing she said to her nurse was, "I can hear them calling. They've been so patient. It's time to fly." She was 9 years old. I quit the following week. Castellanos tried to stop me, said I was one of the best rangers he'd trained, that the program needed people like me. But I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't ignore the screaming, couldn't walk away from victims, couldn't accept that some people are just gone and there's nothing we can do. I moved to the coast, got a job with a small municipal park system. Flat land, no mountains, no canopies that sounded like singing. But I still hear it sometimes. Late at night, when the wind picks up, I hear echoes of that harmony. I find myself wanting to look up to see if the singers have followed me. I have to actively remind myself, don't look up, don't respond, don't deviate. The protocol saved my life, but it cost me something essential. Every scream I ignored, every victim I abandoned, every time I chose my survival over someone else's rescue. I did what I was trained to do. I followed the protocol. I survived. But I'm not sure I'm alive, not in the way I used to be. Sometimes I dream I'm back in those mountains, standing in a clearing, head tilted back, staring up at the canopy. And in the dream, I finally see them, the singers, and they're beautiful.
My name is Caleb Morrison, and I'm a wilderness radio technician for the National Park Service. I maintain the emergency communication towers scattered throughout the Appalachian Range, the relay stations that let rangers, hikers, and rescue teams stay connected in remote areas where cell service doesn't exist. It's lonely work. Most of the towers are in locations so isolated that you need a helicopter or a full day's hike to reach them. But I prefer it that way. Just me, my equipment, and the static hum of electromagnetic waves bouncing through the mountains. Until I picked up the transmission from Salvation Ridge. It happened on October 9th, around 11 p.m. I was working late at Tower Station 7, replacing corroded wiring in the relay equipment. The station sat on a rocky outcrop overlooking the Pisgah National Forest, about 40 miles from the nearest town. I had my monitoring equipment running, standard practice when working on communication systems. You need to check signal quality, identify interference, make sure your repairs aren't creating dead zones. That's when I heard it. A voice breaking through the static on an old emergency frequency that hadn't been used since the 1950s. Anyone listening? This is Salvation Ridge. Need immediate assistance. Please respond. The voice was male, young, desperately frightened, and the signal was impossibly strong for such an old frequency. I grabbed my microphone. This is Tower Station 7. I'm receiving your transmission. What's your emergency? Static crackled. Then, thank God, someone's there. We're trapped. Something's wrong with the sky. People are climbing, and they won't come down. Slow down. What's your location? Salvation Ridge, the old fire lookout. We came up here for the weekend, and... Jesus Christ, there's another one. Sarah, don't look up. Don't... The transmission cut to static, then screaming, multiple voices overlapping, all crying out in terror and confusion. Then silence. I tried to respond. Salvation Ridge, do you copy? What's happening? How many people are with you? Nothing. Just dead air. I immediately called dispatch. This is Morrison at Station 7. I just picked up a distress call from Salvation Ridge. Multiple people in danger, requesting immediate SAR deployment. The dispatcher, a woman named Lucia Ortega, was quiet for a moment. Say that again. Did you say Salvation Ridge? Affirmative. Emergency frequency 2.182 megahertz. The caller said people were climbing and wouldn't come down. Sounded like multiple casualties. Caleb, Salvation Ridge was decommissioned in 1953.
The fire lookout was dismantled in 1955. There's nothing up there. I'm telling you, I heard. I'm pulling the file now. I heard typing. Salvation Ridge. Closed to public access since 1953, following... Oh, hell. What? Following the disappearance of 4 fire lookouts and 3 hikers, all vanished over a 2-week period in October 1953. Search parties found the lookout tower abandoned, radio still transmitting on loop. They never found the bodies. My blood ran cold. What was the radio transmitting? According to the report, a distress call, male voice, requesting assistance, describing people climbing into trees and refusing to come down. The same message I just heard. That's impossible. The tower was dismantled. The radio equipment was removed and destroyed. Then what the hell did I just pick up? Lucia was quiet for a long time. I need to escalate this. Don't touch anything. Don't broadcast on that frequency. I'm contacting the archive division. The who? Just sit tight. Someone will be there in the morning. I didn't sleep that night. I kept monitoring the frequency, hoping to pick up another transmission. Around 3 a.m., I heard something else. Not the distress call, something different. Singing. Multiple voices harmonizing in a way that made my chest ache. The sound was beautiful but wrong, like hearing a choir perform underwater or through walls that weren't quite solid. And underneath the singing, I could hear wind. Not normal wind. This had texture, rhythm, almost like breathing, like the mountain itself was exhaling. I recorded everything. 6 hours of static punctuated by moments of singing, occasional whispers in languages I didn't recognize, and twice more, fragments of that original distress call. Won't stop climbing, reaching for something we can't see. Please send help. Salvation Ridge. Each time, the voice sounded exactly the same. Same inflection, same panic, like a recording playing on loop. But the background sounds changed. Sometimes I heard wind, sometimes silence, and once I heard something else, a sound like wood creaking under immense weight, followed by a wet snapping that made me think of bones breaking. The archive division representative arrived at dawn. Her name was Dr. Nadia Volkov, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. She was accompanied by 2 rangers I didn't recognize, both carrying equipment I had never seen before. Electromagnetic sensors, audio analysis gear, something that looked like a modified Geiger counter. "Play the recording," she said, without preamble. I played everything I'd captured. Dr. Volkov listened without expression, occasionally making notes on a tablet. When it finished, she looked at me. "You know what Salvation Ridge is?" "An abandoned fire lookout." "Wrong. Salvation Ridge is a Class 5 temporal echo site, one of only 3 in North America." "What's a temporal echo site?" She pulled up a map on her tablet, showing the Appalachian Range marked with dozens of colored pins. "You're familiar with residual hauntings, locations where traumatic events imprint themselves on the environment and replay periodically?" "Sure, ghost stories." "Not stories, real phenomenon, scientifically documented. When something traumatic happens, deaths, disasters, intense emotional events, the energy of that event can become embedded in the local environment. Under the right conditions, that energy discharges, replays, like a recording." "Okay, so Salvation Ridge is haunted. What makes it Class 5? "Scale and persistence. Most echo sites replay annually, maybe monthly. Salvation Ridge replays constantly from October 1st through November 30th, every year, without fail, for the last 70 years. The transmission you heard? It's been broadcasting since 1953. Continuously.
The physical equipment was removed, but the broadcast continues anyway, because it's not coming from a radio. It's coming from the location itself. The ridge is replaying the moment of the disaster, and part of that replay includes the electromagnetic signature of the emergency broadcast. I stared at her. That's impossible. You heard it yourself. You recorded it. What's your explanation? I didn't have one. She continued. In October 1953, 4 fire lookouts staffed Salvation Ridge during peak fire season. On October 12th, a hiker named Patricia Wheeler reached the lookout tower with 2 companions, seeking shelter from a sudden storm. That night, something happened. We don't know what. But by morning, all 7 people were gone. You said search parties found the tower abandoned. They did. 3 days later, the radio was still broadcasting Peterson's, the lead lookout's, distress call on loop. The interior of the tower was intact, no signs of struggle, but carved into every surface, walls, floor, ceiling, even the radio equipment, were symbols. What kind of symbols? She pulled up photographs on her tablet. Geometric patterns that hurt to look at, spirals and angles that seemed to shift when I tried to focus on them. The same symbols found at 17 other sites throughout the Appalachians, sites associated with what we call the shrieking gale phenomenon. Have you been briefed on Protocol Shriek? No. Then you need to be, because Salvation Ridge isn't just an echo site. It's an active manifestation zone. And every October, when conditions align, the phenomenon that took those 7 people returns, and it's still hunting. Dr. Volkov spent the next 2 hours briefing me on Protocol Shriek, the atmospheric conditions that triggered the phenomenon, the symptoms of exposure, the survival protocols. Never look up. Never respond to voices. Never enter an active zone after sunset. Why are you telling me this? You're going to close the area, right? Keep people away from Salvation Ridge? It's already closed, has been since 1953. But closing an area doesn't stop people from entering. Every year, someone ignores the warnings. Hikers, paranormal investigators, historians. They go to Salvation Ridge looking for answers, and they don't come back. How many? 42 documented disappearances, probably more that went unreported. We find some of them eventually, in the trees, but most just vanish completely. So what do you need from me? Your tower has the best signal coverage of the Salvation Ridge area. We need you to monitor that frequency continuously during the active season. Document any transmissions. And if you pick up new voices, people who aren't part of the 1953 echo, report immediately. Because that means someone new is up there, someone we might be able to save. Might be? The phenomenon works fast. Once you're exposed, once you hear the singing and look up, you have maybe 30 minutes before the neural changes become permanent. After that, she shook her head. After that, you're part of the echo, part of what Salvation Ridge replays every October. I became the unofficial monitor for Salvation Ridge. Every October and November, I kept that old frequency open, listening for changes in the transmission pattern. Most nights, it was just Peterson's voice repeating his distress call, punctuated by periods of singing. But 3 times in my first year, I heard new voices. The first was on October 17th, a woman, young, terrified. My phone's not working. GPS is going crazy. I can hear people singing, but I can't see anyone. Oh God, what is that in the trees? I reported it immediately. SAR teams were dispatched. They found her campsite at the base of Salvation Ridge, abandoned, tent still standing, supplies intact, no signs of struggle. But carved into the trees around the campsite were fresh symbols, and hanging from the highest branch of an oak tree 60 feet up was her backpack. She was never found. The second was on November 3rd, two male voices arguing. I told you we shouldn't have come up here. The warnings were there for a reason. Shut up and help me find the trail. We need to get down before... Listen, do you hear that? That's singing? Same result. SAR found their abandoned vehicle. No bodies. Fresh symbols carved into the trailhead marker. The third was on November 27th, the last day before the phenomenon went dormant for the year. A group transmission, 4 or 5 voices talking over each other. Everyone needs to stop looking up. But they're so beautiful. I just want to see them closer. Tom, get down from that tree right now. I can almost reach them. They're showing me the pattern. I can see how everything connects. Jesus Christ, he's 40 feet up. How did he climb that fast? SAR found 3 bodies from that group, all in trees, suspended at impossible heights, bodies contorted in ways that suggested their bones had gone soft. The 4th and 5th members were never recovered. But the next October, I heard 2 new voices join the echo, a man and a woman, both singing in perfect harmony with the others. By my 3rd year monitoring Salvation Ridge, I documented 17 new disappearances. Each one followed the same pattern. People entered the area, heard the singing, looked up, and vanished. Some bodies were recovered, most were not, but all of them eventually joined the transmission. The echo was growing. Peterson's 1953 distress call was now mixed with 40, 50, maybe 60 different voices, all singing, all calling, all trapped in that moment of transformation when they looked up and saw something human minds weren't meant to process. Dr. Volkov visited periodically to review my recordings. On her 4th visit, she looked exhausted, older than her years. It's getting worse, she said, listening to the latest transmission. The phenomenon is intensifying. More voices means more resonance. More resonance means the effect spreads farther. What does that mean? It means Salvation Ridge used to have a manifestation radius of about a half mile. Now it's closer to 2 miles. People are getting caught from farther away. The singing is reaching farther. Soon it'll reach the main hiking trails, maybe the highway. Can't you do something? Block the signal somehow? It's not a radio signal we can block. It's a temporal phenomenon. The ridge is replaying those deaths over and over, and each replay makes the next one stronger. It's a feedback loop, and we don't know how to break it. What happens if you can't? She met my eyes. Then eventually, Salvation Ridge won't be the only active site. There are 47 documented echo sites in the Appalachians. Most are dormant or low grade. But if Salvation Ridge reaches critical resonance, it could trigger a cascade, wake up the others, turn the entire mountain range into one continuous manifestation zone. You're talking about thousands of square miles. I'm talking about an entire ecosystem becoming uninhabitable, millions of people living in the shadow of mountains that sing them to death every fall. In my 4th October, something changed. The transmission from Salvation Ridge evolved. It wasn't just replaying anymore, it was interacting. I first noticed it on October 4th. I was monitoring the frequency when I heard Peterson's voice, same as always. "This is Salvation Ridge, requested assistance." Then a new voice, female, clear and strong. "This is Salvation Ridge. We don't need assistance anymore. We need witnesses." I nearly dropped my microphone. This wasn't part of the 1953 echo. This was something new. "Who is this?" I transmitted. "Identify yourself." The female voice responded immediately. "We are everyone who looked up, everyone who saw, everyone who understood. We're trying to show you, Caleb. We've been trying for so long." She knew my name. "How do you know who I am?" I transmitted. "We've been listening to you for years. Every transmission, every report. You're the only one who hears us all, the only one who's been paying attention. Where are you?" "We're in the space between, in the architecture, in the pattern that holds everything together. We're not dead, Caleb. We're transformed, and we want to show you how beautiful it is." I cut the transmission, called Dr. Volkov immediately. She listened to the recording 3 times, her expression growing darker each time. "It's never done this before," she said quietly. "Echo sites replay. They don't interact. They don't learn. They don't target specific individuals." "So what is this?" "Evolution. The phenomenon is becoming self-aware, using the accumulated consciousness of everyone it's absorbed to create something new, something that can think, plan, communicate." "What does it want?" "Same thing it's always wanted, to spread, to grow, to transform more people. But now it's strategic about it. It's not just waiting for people to wander into the manifestation zone. It's calling them. And it's calling you specifically." "Why me?" "Because you're the monitor. You're the one person guaranteed to be listening. If it can convince you to come to Salvation Ridge, to look up, to see what they've seen, then it gains someone with intimate knowledge of the communication systems, someone who could potentially expand its reach." "I'm not going to Salvation Ridge." "Not intentionally, but these things are patient and persuasive. You've been exposed to the transmissions for years now. That creates pathways, weak points in your psychological defenses. It knows how you think. It knows what might convince you." She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, the transmissions became increasingly personal. The voice, I started thinking of it as the chorus because it seemed to speak with many voices simultaneously. New things about me it shouldn't have known. "Your sister Grace, you haven't spoken to her in 3 years. You miss her. We could show you how to let go of that pain. You spend so much time alone. You tell yourself it's preference, but it's fear. Fear of connection, fear of loss. We could show you a different kind of connection, one that never ends. You're monitoring 17 sites now, documenting disappearances. You think you're helping, but you're just watching people die. Come to Salvation Ridge, see what they saw. Then you'll understand there's nothing to fear." I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the singing, that perfect harmony that suggested mathematical relations beyond human comprehension. Dr. Volkov put me on mandatory leave, said I was showing signs of acute exposure and needed to disconnect from the monitoring equipment. But I couldn't stop listening. The chorus was building to something. Every transmission grew more insistent, more urgent. "It's almost time, Caleb. The resonance is nearly complete. When it reaches critical mass, when all 47 sites activate simultaneously, the mountains will sing as one, and everyone will hear, everyone will understand, everyone will ascend." "When?" I transmitted against protocol. "When will it happen?" "October 31st, midnight, the perfect alignment. We need you here, Caleb, to witness, to record, to finally understand what you've been documenting all these years." "And if I refuse?" "Then you'll hear it from wherever you are, and you'll wish you'd been here, wished you'd been with us, wished you'd looked up when you had the chance." I reported everything to Dr. Volkov.
she convened an emergency meeting with the Archive Division and federal agencies I'd never heard of. They made a decision. On October 31st, Salvation Ridge and all 47 documented echo sites would be under military quarantine, no one in or out. They'd use signal jamming equipment to try and disrupt the electromagnetic component of the phenomenon, and if that didn't work, they had contingencies. "What kind of contingencies?" I asked. Dr. Volkov looked at me with something like pity. "The kind we hope we never have to use." October 31st arrived with unseasonably warm weather, clear skies, perfect atmospheric conditions for a shrieking gale manifestation. I was ordered to evacuate my tower by 6 p.m. Military personnel would take over monitoring. I wasn't to be anywhere near communication equipment when midnight struck. I agreed. I packed my gear. I started the hike down from Tower Station 7. But I didn't go far. At 11 p.m., I was back at the tower, using my backup monitoring equipment. I needed to hear what happened, needed to know if the chorus had been telling the truth. At 11:47 p.m., every frequency erupting with activity. Not just Salvation Ridge, all 47 sites broadcasting simultaneously. The chorus speaking with hundreds of voices. "It's time. The alignment is complete. The mountains are singing. Can you hear it, Caleb? Can you hear what we've become?" And I could. God help me, I could. Every tower, every relay station, every communication device in the Appalachian Range was picking up the signal. The singing had synchronized. All those trapped voices, all those transformed consciousnesses, all harmonizing in a pattern so vast and complex it seemed to contain the mathematics of existence itself. I understood then what they'd been trying to show me. The pattern, the architecture, the way reality was constructed from vibration and frequency and relationship. I wanted to see it, needed to see it. My hands moved without conscious thought. I packed my gear. I started walking, not towards the parking lot, towards Salvation Ridge. I was halfway there when Dr. Volkov's radio crackled through my handheld. "Caleb, stop. We know you're moving towards Salvation Ridge. You need to turn around right now." "I need to see them." "No, you don't. That's the phenomenon talking. It's been working on you for 4 years. You're compromised. Please, turn around." But I couldn't stop. The singing was so loud now, so clear, so perfect. I needed to be there, needed to look up, needed to see what 67 transformed souls had seen. I reached the base of Salvation Ridge at 11:58 p.m. The old fire lookout tower was gone, but I could see where it had stood. And in the canopy above, I could see them. Not bodies, not ghosts, something else. Geometric impossibilities made of light and sound and consciousness. The chorus manifested physically, suspended in the space between branches where reality was thin enough for them to exist. And they were beautiful. I started to look up. A hand clamped over my eyes. Strong arms grabbed me, pulled me backward. I fought, screaming, desperate to see, desperate to join them. "I'm sorry," my Volkov's voice close to my ear. "I'm so sorry, but I can't let you look." She injected something into my arm. The world went fuzzy. The last thing I heard before I lost consciousness was the chorus singing in perfect harmony. "Almost, Caleb, you almost understood. Maybe next October, we'll be waiting." I woke up 3 days later in a facility I wasn't allowed to know the location of. Dr. Volkov was there. The quarantine worked, mostly. The signal jamming disrupted the electromagnetic component of the phenomenon. The sites didn't achieve full resonance, no cascade effect. The Appalachians are safe. For now. For now. But Caleb, you can't go back. You're too compromised. The chorus has hooks in you. If you monitor them again, next October they'll call you back, and I won't be there to stop you. So what happens to me? You're being reassigned. Different region, different job, somewhere without echo sites, somewhere you can't hear them. And Salvation Ridge? still broadcasting, still singing, still waiting for someone to listen. That was 2 years ago. I work in the Pacific Northwest now, maintaining cell towers in areas with no history of paranormal activity. It's good work, quiet work, but every October I hear them. Not through equipment, not through radios, just in my mind. A faint singing, beautiful and terrible, calling me back to the mountains. The chorus marked me, made me part of their pattern, and even though I never looked up, even though I was stopped before I could see them fully, I'm still connected. Every year, the singing gets louder, and I know that eventually, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 20,
My name is Benjamin Cross. At least, I think it is. After what happened in the Thornback wilderness, I'm not entirely sure who I am anymore, or who I was supposed to be. Because I learned something in those mountains, something the Park Service has been hiding for decades, something they didn't want anyone to know. The forest remembers, and sometimes it calls you home. I became a ranger because of my grandfather, William Cross. He'd served in the Appalachian wilderness for 30 years before retiring in 1989. My childhood was filled with his stories, tales of rescuing lost hikers, tracking wildlife, weathering storms in remote fire towers. But there was one story he never told, one place he never talked about: Thornback Wilderness, a 60,000-acre tract of old-growth forest in western North Carolina, considered one of the most pristine and least visited wilderness areas in the eastern United States. No roads, no cell service, no trails except for one primitive path that crossed the northern ridge. When I asked him about it once, when I was 12, his face went pale. "Stay away from Thornback," he said. "Promise me, Benjamin, if you become a ranger, work anywhere else, but never ever accept an assignment to Thornback." "Why not?" He just shook his head. "Because the forest there isn't like other forests. It knows things, remembers things, and sometimes it calls people back to settle old debts." I didn't understand what he meant, not then. I do now. Grandfather died when I was 19, heart attack, sudden and massive. At his funeral, his old ranger colleagues came to pay respects. One of them, a weathered man named Charles Whitmore, pulled me aside. "Your grandfather was a good man," he said, "but he carried something heavy for a long time. Something from Thornback." "What happened there?" Charles looked around, making sure no one was listening. "In 1959, your grandfather was assigned to Thornback for firewatch season, October through November. He went in with a partner, another ranger named Thomas Brennan. Only your grandfather came out." "What happened to Brennan?" "The official report said he fell while hiking the Ridge Trail, broke his neck. But your grandfather, he never talked about it, never filed a detailed report. Just said Brennan fell and he couldn't recover the body. The terrain was too unstable." "You don't believe that?" "I believe something happened in Thornback that changed your grandfather. He requested a transfer immediately, refused to ever go back. And every year after that, around late October, he'd get nervous, jumpy, like he was waiting for something." "Waiting for what?" Charles met my eyes. "For the forest to call him back." I thought about that conversation for years, but I didn't really understand it until I accepted my first ranger assignment. Thornback Wilderness, Northern Sector, October through November, fire watch and trail maintenance. I should have remembered my grandfather's warning, should have requested a different assignment, but I was 23, fresh out of ranger training and eager to prove myself. Besides, I didn't believe in haunted forests or supernatural warnings. I reported to the Thornback Ranger Station on October 1st. The outgoing ranger, a skittish woman named Paula Martinez, seemed relieved to be leaving. "You're alone up here," she said, showing me the cabin and equipment. "Nearest backup is 40 miles by trail. The radio works most of the time, but the mountains interfere. Cell phones are useless." "I've worked remote stations before." "Not like this." She handed me a folder. "These are the protocols. Read them. Follow them exactly. Don't deviate." The folder was thick, but one section caught my attention. Auditory Phenomena Response Protocol. If you hear voices calling your name, do not respond. If you hear voices claiming to be lost hikers, do not attempt rescue without confirming their identity via radio. If you hear voices coming from the forest canopy, do not look up under any circumstances. "What kind of voices?" I asked. Paula's expression darkened. "The forest talks here, mimics sounds, calls to people using voices of family, friends, people they've lost. It's an acoustic phenomenon, something about the terrain and wind patterns, but it feels personal. It feels like it knows you." "Has it ever called to you?" "Every night for the last 2 months, my mother's voice. She died when I was 16. The forest sounds exactly like her, calls me by my childhood nickname, asks me to come find her in the trees." She shuddered. "That's why I'm leaving early. I can't handle another night hearing her." The first week was quiet. I settled into the routine, monitoring weather stations, checking trail markers, maintaining equipment. The forest was beautiful in a stark way. Ancient oaks and chestnuts, some over 300 years old, rocky outcroppings covered in moss, creek beds that ran clear and cold. But there was something oppressive about the air, a weight in the air, like the trees were watching, waiting. On the 8th night, I heard my name. Benjamin. Soft, distant, coming from the forest beyond my cabin. A man's voice. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch. "Who's there?" "Benjamin, it's me." The voice was closer now, clearer, and I recognized it. My grandfather, William Cross, dead for 4 years. "Benji, I need to talk to you. Come out here. Come to the ridge." My rational mind said this was impossible, an acoustic trick, wind through the trees, my brain filling in familiar patterns. But the voice was perfect. Every inflection, every subtle rasp from years of smoking, even the nickname Benji that only he had used. "Grandfather?" I called out. "Yes, it's me. I've been waiting for you. I knew you'd come eventually, just like I did, just like my father did. The forest always calls us back, Benji. Always." "You're dead. This isn't real." "Death doesn't mean what you think it means. Not here. Thornback remembers everyone who walks its trails, everyone who spills blood on its soil. We become part of it, and we wait, we call, we bring others home." I backed toward my cabin door. This was exactly what Paula had warned me about. Auditory phenomena. Don't respond, don't engage. But the voice continued. "You can't hide from what's coming, Benji. The forest has been waiting for a cross for 30 years.
It's patient. It's always patient. But now you're here, and the debt must be settled.
I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my grandfather's voice. Not threatening, not angry, just explaining. Telling me stories about the forest, about what lived in it, about the pattern that repeated every generation. In 1929, my great-grandfather, James Cross, had worked Thornback. He'd gone in for fire watch season and never came out. They found his cabin abandoned, his equipment intact, but no sign of James. The official report said he'd probably fallen into one of the deep ravines that scarred the wilderness. In 1959, my grandfather, William, had worked Thornback. His partner, Thomas Brennan, had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Grandfather had fled, refusing to ever return. And now, in 2024, I was here. Third generation, third cross, the pattern continuing. The forest takes one from each generation. My grandfather's voice whispered in my head. It's been that way for 100 years, maybe longer. We don't know why. We don't know what it wants with us, but it calls, and eventually, we all answer. I called the ranger station the next morning, demanded to speak to my supervisor. I need to be reassigned immediately. There's something wrong with this site. My supervisor, a bureaucrat named Trevor Walsh, sighed. Let me guess, you've been hearing voices. You knew? Every ranger assigned to Thornback reports the same thing. It's a documented phenomenon, acoustic anomalies caused by the terrain, nothing supernatural, just unusual wind patterns and echoes. These aren't echoes, they know things, personal things. Coincidence and psychology. Your brain is filling in familiar patterns, making random sounds seem meaningful. It's well documented. You just need to ignore it and stick to the protocols. The voices are claiming to be my dead grandfather. It knows details no one else knows. Your grandfather worked Thornback in 1959. His files are in the system. Other rangers have read them. Stories get passed around. Your subconscious is accessing those memories and projecting them onto random forest sounds. That's not what's happening. Then what is happening, Benjamin? Are you telling me you believe a forest is haunted by your grandfather's ghost? I wanted to say yes, wanted to insist that something supernatural was at work, but saying it out loud made it sound ridiculous. Just let me come back early, please. You've been there for 8 days. The assignment is 60 days. Unless there's a genuine emergency, you're staying. That's final. He hung up. The voices intensified over the next week. Not just my grandfather, others too. Thomas Brennan, the ranger who disappeared in 1959, his voice called from the canopy at night, screaming for help, begging someone to find him. James Cross, my great-grandfather, his voice was older, formal, speaking in the accent of the 1920s. He talked about the debt owed to the mountain and the price for walking ancient ground. And others, voices I didn't recognize, people who claimed to be lost hikers, injured campers, children separated from their families, all calling for help, all coming from the trees. I followed the protocols, didn't respond, didn't look up, didn't attempt rescue without radio confirmation. But the voices were getting louder, more insistent, and they were all saying the same thing. Come to the ridge. Come to the old place. Come where your grandfather stood in 1959. Come where your great-grandfather disappeared in 1929. The forest is waiting. Your family has been running for 3 generations. It's time to stop running. On October 21st, I found something that changed everything. I was checking trail markers on the northern ridge when I discovered a small clearing I'd never seen before. In the center was a stone cairn, a pile of rocks arranged deliberately, obviously man-made. Carved into the largest stone was a name, James Cross, 1929. My great-grandfather's memorial, built by someone who'd found his body, or knew where it was. I searched the area and found 2 more cairns, Thomas Brennan, 1959, and, incredibly, William Cross, 1989. My grandfather, who was supposed to have died of a heart attack in a hospital, not here in Thornback. But the date was wrong. His death certificate said he died in 1993, not 1989. I pulled out my radio, called the archive department, asked them to pull William Cross's personnel file. What they found made my blood turn to ice. According to the official records, William Cross had requested a return assignment to Thornback in October 1989. He'd spent 2 weeks there for unfinished business. He'd filed daily reports for the first week, then gone silent. When rangers checked in on him, they found his cabin abandoned. His body was never recovered. He was declared dead in absentia in 1993. But I'd attended his funeral in 1989. I'd seen him buried. I'd visited his grave. Or had I? Memories started fragmenting. Details became uncertain. Had I really been at a funeral? Or had I been told about a funeral? Had I seen a casket lowered into the ground? Or just imagined? The forest was messing with my head, rewriting my memories, making me question what was real.
That night, my grandfather's voice returned. But this time it was different, clearer, more present. You found the cairns. Good. Now you know the truth. Now you understand what Thornback does. What does it do? I demanded. What the hell is this place? A thin place, a junction. The Cherokee knew it, called it Nvadohiu, the place where the dead speak, where the boundary between what is and what was becomes permeable. You're not really my grandfather. You're something else using his voice. I am William Cross, or I was, or I will be. Time doesn't work the same here. Past, present, future, they're all layered, all accessible. The forest exists in all of them simultaneously. Why? Why does it do this? Because something lives here, something old, older than the trees, older than the mountains. It feeds on memory, on identity, on the stories we carry. When you walk Thornback, you leave traces, echoes, and the forest collects them, preserves them, replays them. So you're just an echo? A recording? More than that. I'm a fragment, a piece of the real William Cross that stayed behind when he ran in 1959. The piece that understood what the forest wanted. The piece that came back in 1989 to settle the debt. What debt? The Cross family has walked this land for 5 generations. My grandfather, your great-great-grandfather, was one of the first loggers to harvest timber from Thornback in 1887. He took from the forest, took trees that had stood for centuries, violated sacred ground. That's not my fault. I wasn't even born. But you carry the name, you carry the blood, you carry the debt. That's how it works. The forest remembers, and it collects. One cross per generation until the debt is paid. Paid how? You have to give back what was taken. You have to become part of the forest. Let it absorb your memories, your identity, your story. Add yourself to the archive. Become one of the voices that calls to the next generation. No, I'm not doing that. I'm leaving. You can leave, like I did in 1959. You can run, live the rest of your life knowing you dodged the debt. But it won't end. The forest will wait. It'll call your children, your grandchildren. The pattern will continue until someone finally pays. Then I won't have children. You already have a son, 3 years old. His name is Michael. You didn't even know, did you? The woman you dated in college, Sarah Chen, she tried to contact you, but you'd already moved, started ranger training. She raised Michael alone, never told him about you. My heart stopped. You're lying. The forest sees all paths, all possibilities, all versions of the story. In one version, you never come to Thornback. You meet Sarah again in 5 years. You build a life together. You raise Michael. In another version, you pay the debt here, and Michael never knows you existed. But in every version where you run, the forest eventually calls Michael, or his children, or their children. The pattern passes down. It always passes down. I spent the next 3 days trying to verify what my grandfather's voice had told me. I tracked down Sarah Chen through social media, found photos of her with a young boy, Michael, who had my eyes, my smile. She'd tried to find me, had left messages at my old address, tried calling numbers that no longer worked, eventually gave up. I had a son I'd never met, and if I left Thornback without paying the debt, the forest would call him, would drag him into this nightmare when he was old enough to hear his name in the wind. I couldn't let that happen. On October 31st, I hiked to the ridge, to the clearing with the 3 cairns. I knew what I had to do. My grandfather's voice was waiting. You came. I knew you would. The Cross family always does the right thing, eventually. What do I have to do? Look up. See what lives in the canopy. Let it see you. Let it read your memories, your story, your identity. Give yourself to the forest. Become part of the archive. Pay the debt. And then Michael is free. The debt is settled. Yes, the pattern ends with you. Your son will never hear his name called by the trees. Your family will be released. I took a deep breath. Okay, I'll do it. Benjamin, wait. A new voice, female, young. Don't listen to him. He's not your grandfather. He's the forest wearing your grandfather's voice. I spun around. A woman stood at the edge of the clearing. She looked familiar, like Paula Martinez, the ranger who left before I arrived, but different, younger, translucent. Paula? No, I'm what Paula left behind, the part of her that almost gave in, almost looked up. I'm her fear, her doubt, her memory of this place. What are you talking about? The forest doesn't just replay the dead, it replays everyone who's ever walked here. Every strong emotion, every moment of fear or wonder or surrender, it gets preserved, becomes part of the archive. I'm the echo of Paula's terror, and I'm trying to warn you. Warn me about what? The debt is a lie. There is no debt. Your great-great-grandfather didn't violate sacred ground. The forest isn't collecting payment. It's collecting stories. It's addicted to human consciousness, human memory. It wants to preserve every story, every identity, everyone who ever walked these trails. Then why does it target specific families? Because targeting families creates generational trauma, creates patterns, and patterns make stories stronger, more resonant, more worth preserving. The Cross family isn't being punished, you're being harvested. All of you, your great-grandfather, your grandfather, and now you. My grandfather's voice roared. Don't listen to her. She's just an echo, a fragment. I'm real. I'm trying to save Michael. Paula's echo shook her head. If you look up, if you let the forest read you, you'll become like us, like all the voices, trapped in the pattern, replaying forever. Michael won't be free. He'll just inherit a different curse. He'll hear his father's voice calling from the trees, begging him to come to Thornback to complete the story. Then what do I do? Break the pattern, refuse to play, leave Thornback without looking up. Let the forest stay hungry, let it call and call with no answer. Teach Michael about this place, warn him, make sure he never comes here, end the story by refusing to participate. But the voices said, the voices will say anything to make you look up, to make you feed the forest. They're not evil, they're just lonely. They want more company, more echoes, more stories to replay. I stood in that clearing for an hour, torn between two choices. Look up, pay the debt, end the pattern, trust that the forest would release my family. Or walk away, refuse to participate, live with the uncertainty, teach Michael to be stronger than I was. In the end, I chose the second option. I walked away from the cairns, away from the voices, away from Thornback wilderness. I kept my eyes down, ignored the screaming, ignored my grandfather begging me to come back, ignored Thomas Brennan crying for rescue, ignored James Cross promising that the debt would follow me forever. I hiked 40 miles in 2 days, didn't stop, didn't look back. When I reached the ranger station, I submitted my resignation, effective immediately. That was 3 months ago. I tracked down Sarah Chen, met my son, explained everything, the voices, the forest, the generational curse. She thought I was insane at first, but I showed her the documentation, the disappearances, the pattern. She agreed to keep Michael away from Thornback, to teach him about the place without ever visiting it, to break the story by refusing to complete it. I still hear the voices sometimes, late at night, my grandfather calling, Thomas Brennan screaming, the forest itself whispering my name. But I don't answer. I don't know if I made the right choice. I don't know if the debt is real or if the forest is just collecting stories. I don't know if Michael will be safe or if the voices will call him when he's old enough. But I do know this. Some patterns can only be broken by refusing to participate. Some stories can only end when someone chooses not to tell them. The forest remembers. It will always remember. But I don't have to give it new memories. I don't have to feed it my story, and neither does my son. The Cross family debt, real or imagined, ends with me. Not because I paid it, but because I walked away.